We just jump right in. All right, cool. Excellent. So, welcome. I'm going to obviously buy for time slightly as people slowly trickle in, but welcome to our little stream. We actually almost missed the stream because we're too busy talking about Sailor Moon before this started.
It
Which is
ruins more streams, I think,
honest.
yeah, than
Sailor Moon.
anything else, yeah.
Yeah, Sailor Moon's great though. I can talk about that, and maybe I'm still thinking about my Sailor Moon project, which is coming.
Okay.
It may be
Mhm.
part of the Pride project I have, which is this massive thing. I'm not sure if I'm including it
Ooh.
with Pride or doing it right after. It depends on how many. Oh my goodness, that thing's gonna be crazy. So, welcome if you're new to my channel, of which I think a few of you probably are because um, the Harry Potter video did quite well apparently. I usually do streams on Tuesdays or whenever in the week just to talk about things and hang out with some friends. Last week it was just me, and I almost died from hyperventilation. So I decided, for the sake of my own health, to have someone else with me to talk about Harry Potter, and someone else who actually just also released a Harry Potter video. Who are you again? Have we met? Have I recommended your videos in anything previously?
Yes, in fact, you were kind enough to shout me out in your very successful, like you said, Harry Potter video, which I appreciate. Hi, my name is Madeline May, she, her, and it's thank you for having me back on the channel. I'm a big fan of your work.
No. I mean, you're awesome. So I'm gonna have you on no matter what. I actually was, while you were trying to introduce yourself, and I was not paying attention to what I was doing. I almost spilled on myself.
Aw,
I
what are you
have
drinking?
right now. I'm drinking a beer from a New Jersey brewery that I believe just shut down recently. Unfortunately, I
Oh
would
my
recommend it
God.
otherwise. 'Cause I like recommending local places to New Jersey and New
Sure.
Yorkians, but
Oh,
unfortunately, I
I
think
I am a
they're.
big craft beer nerd, for sure. I love just going to breweries, and I'm an IPA gal. Yes,
Well,
I am that hipster. Uh,
Uh,
so I'm totally with that. Maybe I'll
Madeline, you
get
do
some beer
realize I'm
sometime.
also drinking an IPA right now, right? You do realize
Okay,
that?
yeah. I mean, I don't know if
Those
I was
hipsters,
thinking of,
man.
I was thinking of a joke, and I don't know if I can make it in my head, but
Mm. Nope.
my God.
I love IPAs. I was gonna get. I
Oh
was
my
trying.
God.
I was looking up cocktails for Harry Potter. Unfortunately,
Hmm.
they all have ingredients I don't have. Like a lot of these Harry Potter themed cocktails involved Fireball whiskey, which I don't have because I
Hmm.
have taste.
It's also, yeah, I
Because I
gotta
have good
say,
taste.
I don't understand the appeal of Fireball,
Well, because it's
either.
cheap,
Or
I think.
I think it's cheap. My controversial is I don't like Jaeger at all, because
Like a
I don't like
yeah.
I
Is
don't
that
like licorice.
controversial?
I do not know, but I know people love Jaeger, but like I just hate the taste of licorice, and that's
I've
what
never met a human
Jaeger
being
tastes
who
like.
actually genuinely liked Jaeger. I've always seen people who order it, but those people don't enjoy Jaeger. So I don't
Yeah,
know
they
what they're
usually
dealing with.
drink it as fast as possible within some sort of bomb
Yeah,
uh
Jaeger bombs.
concoction.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe they're not super into it.
Anyway,
Um
but talking about alcohol,
anyway, we're talking about alcohol today on the Brewers podcast.
wouldn't that be something? Maybe
Um
I'll start that open. Maybe I'll start a brewery podcast if that
this
takes
is the
off.
entire we have reached the limit of my alcohol knowledge. So
Hmm.
I this is it. That's the end of my I don't
Yeah.
know anything about beer. I'm just an enjoyer of beer. That's all I can say.
I
Go ahead,
used to
beautiful
brew
question.
wine with my parents when I was younger. That's like the most Italian thing a person can say.
Oh my
Uh,
God, my here here's even crazier. My roommate Drew has been brewing his own mead for the first time ever,
that
and
sounds delicious.
we've just been watching the progress for the last like month or so. It's so I'm excited. I think I'm not a huge fan of mead, but I am excited to see how this now that because it literally like it's in a cupboard in our kitchen, and I can just like look at it whenever, as it's stewing or
That
whatever it does.
sounds really good, actually. I love mead. Anyway, so I do
I'll
want to
let you
talk.
know how it
Oh,
is. Yeah,
oh,
yeah.
heck
Anyway,
yeah. No, I want to respond to a
yeah.
couple comments. I noticed one in particular that caught my eye. Zev's Cozy Place asks, have you ever read the Witchling series by Claribel A. Ortega? It's a queer inclusive spiritual successor to the Harry Potter series. Not only have I read that series, I've like followed Clarabelle since before they, I forget, if I'm not sure if it's she, her, or they, them pronouns, since before they were published. I've always really liked their work. Welcome. So we're going to be talking about Harry Potter. We're going to be talking about 2 different videos. It looks like we lost Madeline for a second, so I'll just hold down the fort for right now. So we both have released a new video on Harry Potter in the last couple of weeks. Both of us we have strong opinions, but we come from different disciplines of Harry Potter in terms of our knowledge and experiences with it. As my video indicates, I've read the books when they were coming out. I'm a longtime fan. I'll let Madeline explain her perspectives on them. I do want to also address a few comments I received on the video, because there were a few criticisms I got that I have to acknowledge in a way that you're right. One common criticism, I'll let Madeline put her on her earphones there before we get started.
Sorry about that.
No, it's all good. I was
just I had something in my eye that I needed to dab out, and then I also decided that I'm going to join you with my own.
Oh, heck yeah.
IPA, Smog City, which I believe is a local.
Oh, nice.
Brewery here.
Mine is the A game. If you're in New Jersey, North Jersey specifically, but unfortunately, I think this brewery is actually shut down. I'm not sure, but anyway.
Oh my god! So wait, how are you drinking it?
Oh, well, they shut down, but stores are still selling their, the cans they have on stock, so I got one of the last ones they had, yeah.
Yeah, that's really funny. Now, I gotta say Trader Joe's is a very solid place for, local craft beers, especially, the canned stuff.
I had no idea that.
Yeah, every time I go there, they have a bunch of, local stuff, I know Smog City's one, some of the other stuff. Sometimes I just collect the can. If the can has good cool art, I like to just kind of have it.
Valid. All right, so Harry Potter. Let's focus.
Harry Potter got drunk, right? In one of those books.
Probably a few. They have butter beer and fire whiskey, which they don't actually.
And Giggle Water. Giggle Water, one of the dumbest names for anything, I think, in my. Well, you drink it and you laugh. That's what you do.
I'm not even sure it's the dumbest name in Harry Potter, to be quite honest with you. they have some doozies.
I didn't say that. I said one of the dumbest drink names ever, at least. But that features prominently in the Fantastic Beast movie.
And I feel it's an interesting thing too, because I never really mentioned Fantastic Beasts in my video, whereas you focused very heavily on Fantastic Beasts. I think the extent of which, when I mentioned it, was the discussion of the maps of the school districts in Harry Potter. I think that was the biggest thing I focused on there. But
yeah.
Anyway, so
let's get into it. Harry Potter isn't very great.
Now there is something I do want to. There's a couple criticisms of my video I do want to address.
Okay.
Of which I think. And by the way, if you have a question and or a comment, we'll try to get to everything. But if you really want us to read it, leave it as a super chat. We'll absolutely see it. Or we can just pause and look at us, but you've seen how conversation so far, we are easily distracted. So
I am not looking at the comments. So if you are asking questions to me, which that's
I have an
nice
eye on them.
Of you if you are, Ant Dude, which I like to call you Ant Dude. I like because that's your Twitter, Ant Dude.
Ant Dude is I think Ant Dude is taken. I think someone confused me for some YouTuber named, I think, Ant Dude a while back.
You used to be Ant Dude on Twitter.
I was never Dude. I was always Ant.
I'm losing my mind. Then okay, then maybe
Yeah. Anyway, so couple criticisms I want to address before we continue. So one criticism I saw a lot was referencing that the Patel twins and Kingsley Shacklebolt are not the only black characters in Harry Potter. I would like to argue that Dean Thomas and a lot of those characters are actually not described specifically as any ethnicity in the books, but in the films they recast them. And I would like to see the books kind of, if they did acknowledge any skin tone differences, they used it after the films came out. But in general, J.K. Rowling was very avoidant of describing skin tone in her books. I think it was kind of the default argument that everyone was. That's a whole discussion too, as well. That the white as default kind of reading opinion trope, which that could be criticized too by someone who has more melatonin than I do. Maybe I should have someone someone who's a little darker skinned than either the two of us to discuss that topic, because I feel like I'm going to mangle the specifics and nuances of it.
I think that's brave. I think that's very brave of you to not talk about it.
No, listen, I have enough friends who are black and Indian to know when to not talk.
I have black and Indian friends, like, but in the good way. You should say that, like, I have enough marginalized friends to know when it's not my business.
No, that's what I mean. Oh yeah, no, that's what I'm saying.
And I agree. I'm the same way. Like, I'm marginalized in some aspects, but other aspects, I'm not going to pretend like I know anything about it. It's a different experience.
I think our thumbnail puts front and center our marginalized identities very overtly.
Gay.
Very gay, extremely gay.
Very gay, yes.
So okay, another criticism I saw was that they were other books that were written for younger audiences that were fantasy books before Harry Potter. And while I did not memorize every single one of them, I am going to reference them right now because I think these are all really good books, and B, I did kind of oversimplify how many fantasy books they were for younger audiences in the mid-90s. You have to understand also that it's easy to go back in the list and say, oh, well, I read this book as a kid. Well, if you're growing up in like the 90s and all you have is a library, whatever's in your library really is what you have available to you. You know, because you can't buy books like willy-nilly unless your parents are rich. So a few books. The Animorph series, the Chronicles of Prydain.
Narnia.
Garth Nix's Old Kingdom series, the most famous, which is Sabriel. Narnia, of course, which I reference in the books, in the video, as well as The Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. Although I would not think of The Hobbit as Lord of the Rings as a kid's book. Another one was, I think, Gregor the Overlord was one that came out around the time of Harry Potter, and that was actually written by Suzanne Collins, who would later go on to write The Hunger Games. Let me see what else. Lewis Lowery wrote some YA fantasy books. There were some books that had crossover appeal. Of course, there was Discworld, which everyone in the comments mentioned Discworld. I neglected to mention it because I feel the vibe is very different from Harry Potter. I feel it's a little more adult and satirical. I kind of compare that more with like Douglas Adams's Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy than Harry Potter, but again, that's
I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, they're very different in style and tone. Some people even mentioned a few books that were published around the same time as Harry Potter. Of course, Circle of Magic was one. Tamora Pierce's work. I'm going to forget a few, but they were books. But these books were not as mainstream in the 90s as they are now in hindsight, when people who grew up with them have said, hey, this book's excellent, grew up with it, read it. I didn't know who Tamora Pierce was until much later in life. I think middle school, which is unfortunate because her books are incredible. So yeah. The other criticism that I have with myself is I really really messed up the whole part with Slytherin House where I might talk about it, because I neglected to mention that Nina from Six of Crows has the power to control minds and raise the dead, sort of. So that would have been a good thing.
Necromancy.
Yeah, her magic is emotional influence, and later on in the book series, necromancy, which manifests in some gruesome, grotesque ways, and it's really cool.
This is the Skull and Bones.
Six of Crows, yeah. Well, Shadow and Bones, which is the first. Shadow and Bones. It's weird. So Shadow of Bones is the first.
I've heard of Shadow of Bones. I haven't heard of the rest of it.
So Shadow and Bones is the first trilogy that Leigh Bardugo wrote, and then after that she wrote Six of Crows, which is a duology, and then she wrote another duology after that. But when are
they in the same world?
Yeah, so basically they're a couple years apart in different regions of the world, and when they would go on to adapt the books into a series, they called it Shadow and Bone. That was on Netflix. But bizarrely, and this is what gets really confusing, they adapted the plot of the Shadow and Bones trilogy, but then they took the characters from Six of Crows and inserted them into the plot of Shadow and Bone, despite the fact that these characters would not interact in that time period.
Hey, God, they always do that with like this franchise stuff. They want to cram like as many characters in as possible to make everyone happy.
Oh, but it gets even weirder because then they took plot elements from throughout Six of Crows. And,
Yeah, I mean,
and second book.
it's the same thing. No, they just love to do this. You know, that's why I call it Spider-Man 3ing, where it's like you just have to put as much into a movie, whether it helps or not, just because that's what a producer or something wants. Like, hey, you gotta put the whole series. Everyone's got to be in this. We're never making another one. Put them all in right now.
Yeah, well, that's what they ultimately did. They canceled the show after 2 seasons, which is unfortunate because I actually really did enjoy the show.
That's the Netflix tradition. The two-season Netflix tradition, yeah, because they're all algorithm-based.
It's terrible.
Yeah, no, it's awful.
So a couple of comments I'm noticing right now, too. Some people are saying that Lord of the Rings was written for teenagers at the time it was written, which... Yeah. That to me blows my mind because...
I think that's... No, that makes a lot of sense to me. I think it's for, like, teens or at least an older... teen audience, because like I remember like when my friends were reading like Lord of the Rings, it was like 9th or 10th grade, like it was a little bit beyond middle school when people that I knew were reading it. Most of the stuff that we're talking about, I remember its biggest era kind of being like between 8th grade and like 10th grade. Like that seemed to be for where I grew up, at least that seemed to be where a lot of this stuff was being consumed, this kind of fantasy material.
Oh, 100%. For me, I read Lord of the Rings when the movies came out. I was like in 5th, 6th grade. I was reading them. Problem is,
reading them. I thought that it was too. I was so bored. Like they spend like 10 pages describing a door, and I'm like, I can't.
It's a lot. It's really heavy for a young kid. And that's what my problem was when I was first reading it. Because I'm reading the books, I'm going through it. And, like, I realized in hindsight, most of it was going in one ear and out the other. I was barely absorbing most of it because I was too young. I didn't get what they were talking about. I didn't have a concept of... And this is right around the time... We're going to talk a lot about the context of the Harry Potter books, too, when they came out, what the landscape culturally was. And for the landscape for Lord of the Rings, when the movies came out, which was, again, when the Harry Potter books were hitting their biggest, the big cycle, this was after 9/11, after the War on Terror started. So, there was a lot of jingoism, I think, in the pop culture. So a book that really contemplates the cost of war, the emotional toll of it, that resonated for me more after I had kind of gone through that experience as a kid, because I lived in New Jersey, like we're North Jersey. We're right by the towers. So we saw all that. So that trauma, I kind of went in that emotional journey too. And when I read the books again in high school and college, I took the experience I had from that trauma, that cultural trauma, not direct war trauma, and I kind of incorporated it into my understanding of the books, and that helped me understand it a lot more. Again, lived experience goes a long way with some texts. And it's also just
it's also interesting how texts change depending on the era in which they're read, because like when you have the text, when it's created, that's kind of considered like the main takeaway. It's like, okay, this was made in this era when this was happening. This is the kind of the stuff to think about. But then you pick it up like 50 years later, and all of this other stuff is happening, and now the text takes on a new meaning because the world in which it's being read is different. This is how a lot of like old media that is now let's say extremely problematic gets kind of reinterpreted. But I think that's also true for thematic elements, like stuff that I think like Star Wars, for instance, was at the time made as a allegory of the Vietnam War.
Yeah, with the rebels as the Viet Cong.
In the Viet Cong, exactly. But like now, we're 50 years, past that. So there's new contexts. So maybe now people would watch it. They would think maybe more of the Palestine resistance,
exactly,
against Israel or something. Because that I think that's what is really interesting, and why I think a lot of these books are so timeless is because the themes that resonate in this work kind of always appeal to their target audience, whether it's teenagers or kids, because these problems are kind of always happening. Like the shape of the problems and the situations change, and more things get added and added on. But like being a teen the same. It's nowhere. So the
Human experience, doesn't change.
Yeah, human experience is never like even like kids like kids with their cell phones don't get those things, or they're on their TikToks and whatever. It's like no, I'm pretty sure kids would still enjoy reading Lord of the Rings today if you give it to them. I don't think that's not gonna. I don't think if they don't like it, it's not because they're on TikTok all day. It's just
it's because the books are hard to grasp at some points.
And it's not for everyone. Like I was I didn't read a lot of fantasy stuff. I was a sci-fi.
Well, actually,
kid, before we
get something you said, I do want to touch on right now before we lose track of it. One comment did add. Nicholas Zande said that why did you in regards to the Harry Potter schools, when you mentioned Palestine and all that, why does Ukraine go to the same wizarding school as Russia and Israel go to the same wizarding school as Palestine? And by the way, Palestine and Israel also go to the same wizarding school as Egypt and Libya and the northern half of Africa.
Yeah, there is no Middle Eastern wizarding school.
Well, there is. It's just also North Africa as well, because J.K. Rowling did the same thing.
That's what I mean. Yeah, no, that's exactly what I mean. Like Africa and the Middle East that is considered one school. So the racist Africa school is considered just everything for anyone within Africa and the Middle East, like maybe the Southeast as well. But like that's what's so insane, because like the fact that she couldn't comprehend those things being different, and like why like the Middle East, like one of the most like just fascinating histories of all time, just the progress in intellectual discovery that came from the Middle East by itself is fascinating and would be really cool to learn within a wizarding context.
Well, you look at like
for her, it's like different. Her, it's like no, it's all Africa. It's all Africa.
Well, you look at you look at the school boundaries. It's all based. It all looks like really reminiscent of colonial influence.
Well, because the Brazilian school has a Portuguese name.
Exactly.
Which is the most telling thing in the world. Yeah.
And you look at say you look at India and Pakistan. You look at China. You look at all that. But then you look at Japan, and Japan has its own school. So Japan has its own school, but China and like Korea and all those other regions, they're the same. India and Pakistan, they're the same. Middle East and Egypt, they're the same. The rest of Africa, the same. It's like
if you don't see the problem of every Asian country going to the Japanese magic school, then you should pick up a history book.
Well, I think Japan is its own separate. Let me bring up the map actually right now, so we can.
So are you saying that? But then where else would the Eastern? Are they all going to Africa then?
Let me show you the map. Let me bring up the map right now. So I'm going to bring it up into...
I hate this aspect of the book so much. This is so infuriating to me.
So I'm going to bring it up onto... So chat, you can... Let me bring us... So we're off screen right now for a second. We can bring this image up. Right here.
I can't see any of this, so you're going to describe it to me.
Nope. You and I are actually off screen. Let me bring us right back. Here we go. We're back now. We've returned. So basically, there is a... Wait, that's strange. This doesn't look at the right one. One second. I think I got the wrong map. Here we go. This is it. This is the one. I lied to you guys. Here's the map. This is the actual map here. Okay, cool. So. Gonna bring our faces right back. Here we go. Now. Let me bring this over here. So. We got... In America, it's Ilvermorny. Ilvermorny, that's the American, Canadian... our faces are way too far over now. One second. The American, Canadian, and Mexican school.
Okay, I'm looking at the map too. I found a way to look at it.
Castello.
Oh my God! Yeah, so all of that pink is supposed to be the Asian schools, which is one of the most racist things I have ever seen.
So the American. So first off, it's just called School 10. It's just called School 10. It's not called.
School 10.
Does not have a name. Meanwhile, Japan has Mahotokoro, which I believe is Japanese for magic or witch or something like that.
No, so here's what it is. These number schools are like implied schools. I did a little bit of research on this.
She didn't even give them a freaking name.
No, these are like implied schools, like especially like for like the Middle Eastern schools. There isn't like an official Middle Eastern school, there is some implied ideas, and there is a gigantic fan created Middle Eastern school that's so convincing that it actually tricks people into thinking this is a canon school because they spent a lot of time working on this imaginary Middle Eastern magic school. But it's not part of it. It's not. So these are all like implied schools. They don't have names.
Okay, so I'm looking at something now. So Beauxbatons and Durmstrang, which are two canon schools that show up in the books, they're basically the other half of Europe. Italy apparently is left out of the running.
There's just no magic in Italy.
There's no magic in Italy. I guess we're just too cool for them. Code of Austerlitz, or how you say it, that's like the USSR. So basically the USSR has its own school, which makes total sense because magic is totally dependent on the,
J.K. Rowling grew up in the Cold War, so obviously she would just assume that's all the same thing.
Exactly. And India, Pakistan, China, and I believe that's Laos, or is that Cambodia? Well, Vietnam's right there.
I love that there's like a European school, but then Hogwarts is like only British kids. Like it's the best school, only the British kids, only the British children. And you say children, but not the British children. I just thought.
Yeah, and exactly, and then but Japan gets a school.
George Washington go to magic school. That would have been really funny if George Washington showed up at American magic school.
Well,
that's my fan theory.
Well, look, I'll be honest with you. The few times that Harry Potter does delve into American history with witchcraft, it gets bad.
I looked into some of it for my video essay about Fantastic Beasts, and it's insane. It's hilarious and insane. Super racist against Native Americans. Like, oh my god.
Yeah. The word.
The actual. The actual. One of the big plots in Fantastic Beasts the movie is extremely racist because the beast that Newt Scamander is trying to release is a like Native American mythological figure. It's the Thunderbird, which is like extremely offensive for them to like portray this like actual like cultural thing to them as like this random magic thing. Like,
but
it's actually really messed up that Thunderbird is like such a central part of the Fantastic Beasts movie, considering like its importance to Native American culture.
I would argue that there's a much worse one that they do. Oh
that's
man,
just the movie. I mean, we can talk about the lore and the backstory, but I'm just talking about the movie
over here right now,
specifically.
Yeah, no, the worst I think would have to be, and again, I don't want to say the particular name of this entity because again in native folklore different tribes they say that even naming this entity is to summon it, and quite frankly, even though I am not native, I have a firm belief in not messing with any culture's possible monsters on the off chance of it being accurate.
I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. But and J.K. Rowling kind of appropriates that to be just it's just a witch that those silly natives don't know about, and it plays off in a very patronizing way that trivializes the actual beliefs of real living people. Like, imagine if someone said, "Oh, Jesus Christ, he was a witch." It's like, the outrage that would cause.
Well, that's what she does. She just kind of takes these historical moments. They're like, "Oh, it's fine for me to just make it." Like, I have a joke in my Fantastic Beasts video that, like, Merlin is canon in Harry Potter. Like, Merlin is in the Harry Potter universe, and he went to Hogwarts.
And he's a Slytherin.
Insanity, and was Slytherin, which is, like, the most insane thing. I remember, I cut this bit, but I had written this section out where I was going to make a joke about Harry Potter, like, why didn't wizards stop 9/11? Mainly because I stumbled on like this Reddit or forum post that was like a bunch of people saying, "How dare you try to talk about 9/11 in Harry Potter? That's really offensive. Please stop talking about 9/11 in Harry Potter. This is whatever."
Better mention it in Harry Potter than in Turning Red, though.
But what's really funny is that one comment that I read, I thought was so amazing. This comment read, it's kind of funny. Like people are saying like she shouldn't talk about 9/11 because that's offensive. It's like, but you know, for somebody who thinks like you're saying it's not okay to talk about 9/11, but it is okay that J.K. Rowling talked about the Salem witch trials as a real thing that happened to actual witches. Like that's pretty hypocritical. And I'm like, yeah, you kind of got her with that one. It's messed up how she uses the Salem witch trials, which was used to kill just normal women, as like, oh, they were also real witches. Like that's messed up.
Well, okay. So I actually remember that passage in the books. I didn't mention it in the video only because it is such a passing thing, but. And Harry Potter is not the only one guilty of trivializing the real Salem witch trials.
I do remember that. You know what? I remember the passage too.
It's in Prisoners of Azkaban, I'm pretty sure, I remember correctly. He's reading like a textbook.
And they say something like they pretended to be burned by like casting a spell on the, which is so stupid.
Well, the problem there is also that most of the witches in Salem weren't burned. They were mostly hung, I believe. I'm pretty sure most were hung, not burned.
Maybe a lot were drowned too, because there was a theory that witches like floated or didn't float or something like that.
Well, in Salem specifically, not so much. I don't believe they were drowned in Salem. I think they were hung and burned. But I remember there was the one that was pressed to death, which is my favorite of all.
Exactly.
I love that one. The guy was, he
found very interesting ways to kill women in all over.
Actually, let me clarify that one statement before too much time passes. When I say I love it, I mean I find it very interesting how that happened. I don't mean I actually enjoyed the process. Oh God.
We love burning.
Cancel before we even started this.
Yeah.
Well, that's not as bad as the Witchfinder General. You ever hear the Witchfinder General? He was a lawyer who would go around he was a real person. He'd go around from village to village in the UK, and he'd always go in and say, "Oh, there's a witch in this town. Your crops are failing. It's a witch, and I'm gonna find the witch." And he'd go around, and he'd find like a woman with like a little mole on her shoulder, and go, "Up, there's the devil's mark. That's what the devil bit her. It's like a little mole on her shoulder, whatever." And they'd use that as motivation to torture and brutalize, and he'd get a nice payment, and he'd go on next town and do it all over again. He made a business out of it.
They actually reference that witch's mark in Fantastic Beasts as well, but also imply that it actually was just the kid, because there's an orphanage. The Fantastic Beasts is really bad. I need to really stress. It's not a good movie. But they have like this whole second plot. It's not a subplot. It's just the second plot of the film of this orphanage with these like magic kids in it. And there's a kid that has like a mark on his head, and he's like, "Is that the witch's mark?" And it's heavily implied he was just beaten by some of the people there. You know, that's how he got that mark. But none of this is ever said again. It's just like a one-line thing. Like everything else in Fantastic Beasts, nothing is explained because there's 50 plots going on at once.
Now, I do want to respond to a couple comments here who are asking, why is Slavic Europe in the same school as Germanic Europe? Why is Iraq going to the same school as Saudi Arabia? And the answer to that... Yeah, well, the answer to that's very simple. Exactly. J.K. Rowling doesn't know the difference between Slavic German and Slavic Europe and Germanic Europe. They don't know why Iraq and Iran wouldn't want to hang out together. Like she just doesn't understand that because she never bothered to learn or absorb the information if you did try learning it.
Well, like a lot of this stuff is basically like J.K. Rowling having a couple of glasses like at midnight and saying, "What should I add to my beautiful world today?" And then just like quickly write something, and because she's a billionaire, just posts it on a website that like is and that's all and that's where a lot of what we're talking about. This map is very fueled by Pottermore and Wizarding World, like basically her additional information, which by all accounts reads like something she just made up in the middle of the night. While like again, I don't know how else you have wizards just poop themselves unless you just had a late night thought that you shouldn't have.
That was the worst.
Anybody.
That was the worst single. But I've taken off the map. I do want to talk about wizards pooping themselves more. That's not for totally academic reasons, of course, not for anything more than that.
It is a big part of my video essay. I do mention it a lot, just because
it's so bizarre.
Do find it fascinating.
Like, why would they write that? Why would they? Why? Like, why would any... Okay, I'm being serious. Why would any human being who wrote a fantasy series detail that? Like, why?
Here's my thought. This is my joke about it. Where I have this theory that like some turf like read that tweet from J.K. Rowling, was like, I think we can get her. I don't think she's all there. I think we can pull her to our side. Maybe it would be really easy. Yeah,
well,
it does feel like someone's like sundialing and being like, I wear a diaper. What if wizards wore diapers too, or something like that? That's how it feels. It feels like just something like an old woman kind of losing it a little bit. It would just tweet out into the world, and because she's a billionaire, she can do that instead of just calling her grandkids or whatever.
Well, I would like to say, why stop there? Why not just remove it out of the? We got a super chat here. Just got here. What did I miss? Well, let's sum up the last few minutes, last half hour for you.
So IPAs, I think, are my favorite of the.
Yeah. So what you missed? We missed a discussion on IPAs. Then we began addressing concerns about Harry Potter, criticisms of my initial video that I agree with or wanted to make sure we got some clarity on.
Unlike my video, which is perfect, and there are no problems with
your video is perfect in every single way.
Yeah,
Madeline, don't worry.
No flaws. I definitely didn't get anything about the lore wrong.
No, not in the least. Everything's accurate. It's totally accurate. There is no wizarding prison in the Harry Potter universe.
There is no. I mean, what would you even call Alcatraz?
I mean, it might have some name. I imagine Azkaban, I guess.
I got so many comments by people that didn't realize that was a joke.
Also, we discussed wizard school boundaries and J.K. Rowling appropriating other cultures. Okay, so that said,
so I want to talk because I still to this day, like I've released the video a couple weeks ago, and I'm still getting comments that are like, how do you not know that there's a wizard prison? And I'm like, I thought the joke was pretty obvious. As I say, like, what do you even call that? Like, maybe I could have made the joke more obvious, but like enough people really thought I just didn't know what Azkaban was, and I find that it's the title of the third movie. Of course I know what it is. Like, I just find that extremely funny how many people assumed I was just stupid and didn't know.
You see, the problem
is sexist and kind of affirming. If it is, sex is affirming. It shows that you do truly see me as a woman, internet, and I appreciate that. Thank you for mansplaining Alcatraz Azkaban to me.
Once you get mansplained on the internet, it means you're truly... There's no ambiguity there. But no, like, I think also it's because, the internet is full of people who unironically say the dumbest stuff in the world. There was a video a while back that, and I don't want to make fun of the creator too much because he got clowned on by everyone in the Godzilla fandom, where he argued that Godzilla was in the public domain. The character Godzilla was in the public domain, not any individual Godzilla movies. Now, a couple of Godzilla films have periodically, the distribution rights are public. I believe any of the Godzilla films that like got a bunch of VHS releases, they did that because there was like a lax rights that they took advantage of.
Saying like if Steamboat Willie is just now entering the public domain, then Godzilla has a long way to go before entering the public domain.
Toho charges by the monster.
I believe it.
The reason why so many of the Godzilla films only have like one monster in it in the American world is because they can only get one monster at a time. Like they have to license them one by one. Otherwise, and that's why so many American companies have had trouble like making Godzilla fighting games, because they can only get 1 or 2 monsters at once, and the Toho won't let them license another character out.
That's so interesting. I mean, because a lot of those American monster Godzilla movies are kind of filled with monsters. Maybe that's a big part of the budget. Then just goes to getting a lot of those kaiju in there.
Well, you look at which ones they actually have. So if you look at all the kaiju films that got the legendary Godzilla films, you got Godzilla, which has Godzilla and a bunch of original monsters. Then you have King Kong Skull Island, which is not from Toho. King Kong's not a Toho property, so no licensing there.
I believe King Kong is public domain. From what
no, it's a little more. It's complicated.
Because a Warner Brothers because Universal, if Universal would own the rights, like Warner Brothers is still able to make a King Kong movie. Matt,
do you want me to get into King Kong rights? Because I will. It's very bizarre.
I believe you.
It has to do with the rights in the 70s. So.
Okay.
So what happened is.
To me, I'm such a nerd. This stuff is super fascinating to me.
Oh, I hear you. No, it's very complicated. It involves a lot. I see a super chat. I'll answer it in a second. I'll sum up this real quick. 70s, the director and the studio RKO both owned the rights to Godzilla, and they both separately sold them, and that caused a bunch of issues. Anyway, super chat time. What would World War II, the Cold War, and post-colonialism look like for the Wizarding World? Lol.
There are answers.
They are some.
We have answers in the canon about some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there are some answers actually. World War II, especially because that's when Fantastic Beasts. That builds up to Fantastic Beasts.
No. Fantastic Beasts built up to World War II.
That's what I meant to say. Yeah,
yeah. Because World War II is the idea is that World War II is going to be the Grindelwald fighting stuff. That's kind of taking the place. The idea that they want to say is that there was a different, almost identical kind of World War II happening in the wizard world, while our World War II is happening. I think that's what J.K. Rowling would want to do if
Fantastic Beasts, the second one does mention the atomic bomb.
Yeah, but from what I understand, like the full plan of the Fantastic Beasts movie was to lead up to just like a wizard World War II at the same time as a human World War II was going on, because wizards were in World War I. That is confirmed by Fantastic Beasts in the dumbest way possible. I don't know why wizards were in World War I. I make a big joke about it in my video that I don't know was Dumbledore really sad when Archduke Franz Ferdinand died. I don't know why wizards were in World War I. Maybe they also wanted an excuse for, maybe they want an excuse for imperialist conquest, which, as we've established, there is some imperialist tendencies of the wizarding world just by the naming conventions and how lazy J.K. Rowling is with world building. You just create some of these imperialist, and that's kind of what my video is. It's not necessarily like what the problems, like what the plot holes are and what the problems are of the wizarding world, but what they represent and like what they mean.
Well, I think it's interesting too because I agree. Again, watch her video. It's really good.
Thank you. It's doing well. I think it just passed 16,000 views,
which is incredible.
So
I'm
very
love
happy
that.
about that.
No, these are some of the most successful videos we've both done. So I'm going to discuss it entirely and celebrate how successful.
Really, yeah.
But that being said, the thing with Fantastic Beasts, how I interpreted it also, was that the Grindelwald is fighting to prevent stuff like the Manhattan Project from happening, or
right. But it's also
it's like almost like it's trying. So before you say that, I'll say my thought. Then we'll just make sure you have make sure you know what I'm saying before you respond to it, because we may be saying the same thing.
Okay.
Cool. The big thing I noticed is that it seems almost as if Grindelwald's trying to stop World War II, and the heroes are trying to keep it on course. Because again, and the idea is that if the Grindelwald tries to stop Muggles and control the Muggles for their own good, it's like committing atrocities for the quote unquote greater good. The problem is though that they're still trying to fight the Nazis. They're still trying to stop the Holocaust from happening, and
but that fits in with, like, from what I understand, the cursed child play is about a similar paradox, where it's like you have to let these horrible things happen in order for history to work. So that actually makes a lot of sense. What you're saying. What I find fascinating about Grindelwald's, what he says and what he wants to do, which he believes that wizards should like be the lords of humans and whatever, that's already what's happening in the wizarding world. Like everything in the wizarding world is already what Grindelwald wants. He's just saying the quiet part out loud because everybody already hates humans. They basically do whatever they want to humans. They can erase anyone's brain whenever they want. There is like they are already kind of like the kings and queens and rulers of this world. They're just not actively saying that because if you read a Harry Potter project, any kind of wizarding project from J.K. Rowling, the answer is always that wizards rule, everyone else drools. Like that is the entire policy of the Harry Potter project, is that if you are a wizard, you are kind of the best. If you're not a wizard, you kind of suck, with exceptions, but even the exceptions are interesting because the exceptions, I think, prove the norm as well. Like Jacob as a character in Fantastic Beasts is a comic relief character and basically serves to kind of prove how dumb a lot of these like how dumb they kind of see humans as, because we're talking about like,
which is a shame. He's the best character in that movie, honestly.
He is the best character, and you talk about in your video, and the about all the fat phobia that's in Rowling's work. They do a lot of it to Jacob's character in the Fantastic Beasts movie. There's a lot of fat jokes at his expense.
It's really well. And the only thing I think that is a saving grace for that movie with that character, especially, is that it's directed and not written, because J.K. Rowling's language, especially in her crime novels that she wrote, her mystery novels, it's amped up to 20. Whatever's in Harry Potter is so much worse. Like
There's a scene in Fantastic. Yeah, sorry.
Well, I was gonna say in her Galbraith, Robert Galbraith books, which is ironic considering that J.K. Rowling is transphobic but took a man's name to write books. But what do I know?
Wasn't there? I mean, supposedly there's like somebody said like Robert Galbraith like references something transphobic, or
I think some scientist. I'm not sure if that's it's either a really odd coincidence or a very deliberate choice.
I don't know how much merit there is to that, but that's just something I remember hearing.
About. No, but what was I gonna say? No, her descriptions in those books are very, like, there's descriptions about there's one that stands out. I forget the exact phrasing, where she describes a person as very, very overweight and starts speculating about the size of other parts of his body in relation to his. Again, it's very gross. It's very, very inappropriate. It feels very like it's just amped. Everything that her bullying tendency is amped up.
Yeah, it's a PG-13 movie.
Yeah.
Fantastic Beasts has this scene where Jacob is trying to go into Newt's briefcase for the first time, and he takes a minute because he's too fat to get into the briefcase. And there's a big extended punchline like, oh, he's so fat he can't fit in. And then like a little bit later, we just see a gigantic rhino monster like fit in perfectly one time into the briefcase. So it's like, like, what's this movie? Like, what is wrong with this movie? Why is any of this stuff happening?
It's very strange.
So, yeah, it's really gross. But I do think that there is an ideology, which I think you also kind of lean into with your video, that there is kind of a worldview, I think, that is being expressed by these decisions, even these bad quote unquote like mistake, I screwed up decisions. I think there is an ideology, which is kind of what I was trying to express in my video.
Of course, and there's one thing too I want to mention as well in relation to this whole colonialist perspective that we mentioned in the one comment. So the Prime Minister of Britain answers to the wizard, to Cornelius Fudge, or whoever the minister is at the time, Mr. Magic. Yes. They answer to him. It's not like there's a political relationship where it's like another from two countries who discuss and try to negotiate. It's more like the Minister of Magic shows up, tells the Prime Minister it's not Tony Blair, is it? Like, I forget who.
It's like a stand. It's a stand-in. I don't think it's a real person.
Yeah.
But literally comes in as a magic painting to.
Well, there's the painting, and doesn't she? I think he uses flu powder. I think, right? He comes in the fireplace, comes out.
From what this is something I found out while making my video, was that like literally just appears as like there's a portrait of like the magic prime minister in the office of the prime minister of Britain, and it just comes to life and says, hey, a bunch of weird stuff's gonna happen, and the prime minister is like, what? I've never heard of any of this. He's like, I'm gonna tell people, and they're like, oh, you think people are gonna believe you? We're so cool and popular and powerful, and the prime minister like shuts up. It's I feel like it's made to like say that the prime minister is kind of dumb. I think that's kind of, it's supposed to be jokey. But it's also, like, again, the implications that there's just, like, the wizards are like, oh, we're always watching and we can do whatever you want. You didn't even know we existed until now, and you can't do anything about it. Like,
yeah,
it's very, yeah.
And the thing also is it's one thing if it's, like, some back and forth, but even, like, characters like Hermione, like, just wipe memories out of her parents just out of convenience, and they're never really acknowledged as people beyond like you can tell is the pain of the emotional pain of the act itself. There's obviously discussions of trauma, but we never really go the text of the story never focuses on them, and you can read that as one in two ways. You can read that in one of two ways, I feel. One way, and this is the charitable interpretation, is because the books are written from the perspective of Harry, it's only the things that he really notices, so maybe he doesn't think of that, and that's a discussion I saw too. in response to the video that some of the criticisms I had of the book were like, well, that's actually just Harry's vision of it. It's not the authorial intent, even though there are chapters outside of Harry's perspective. The idea being that the text itself reflects the worldview of its protagonist, and therefore characters who are outside that worldview don't matter because you don't really think about people who you don't know. That's one interpretation, and one I do not subscribe to. The other one I subscribe to, which I think is what you're going to say, and if I'm wrong, then cut me off and just tell me what you think. I think that J.K. Rowling didn't think of it, and so didn't include it, and so didn't write it, and that's it. That's my interpretation of it.
No, actually, I go even further with this. My interpretation, especially to that specific argument that you're mentioning, which is that it's supposed to be everything in Harry Potter is built for Harry Potter. And this is a big point of my video essay, is that the world of Harry Potter, the world building of Harry Potter exists in order to benefit and progress the story of Harry Potter himself. A lot of decisions that are made are only made because they benefit or help Harry Potter do whatever he needs to do. Like I make a statement that like the reason a position like speaker exists in Quidditch, a position by all accounts that just breaks the game of Quidditch because if you grab it you win, like why have anything else? The reason that exists is for Harry Potter to have that position and be the most special sports boy ever. That's why these things exist.
I don't understand that at all.
That's I'm kind of explaining, I think, why that's happening is because, like, if you think of Harry Potter as kind of like the ultimate hero's journey narrative, which is that, like, everything is kind of about Harry Potter going on this journey and what all of these different things. And also, absolutely thinking of Harry Potter as a power fantasy, as, like, a kid who was, like, bullied and then he all of a sudden gets everything he wants. Then, like, the narrative decisions make sense within that context. Like I argue that Harry Potter is at its best and only makes sense when it's just Harry Potter as a kid at a magic private school. Once it goes beyond that, you realize that this world that Rowling has made was not meant to leave the walls of Hogwarts. Because then you have to start asking like the big questions, like how do spells work? What does this mean? But when it's just kids in a school, you don't have to think about those things.
Exactly.
But because J.K. Rowling wants her world to be just as believable as like a Lord of the Rings Middle-earth style world, she forces it out. But then all of these things that were, again, made for one boy's benefit was the only reason, for one boy's story, is the only reason a lot of these things exist. Once you put that, you start to realize that none of this works. Like once Harry Potter is gone, the character Harry Potter is gone from the wizarding world, there is no reason for these things to exist anymore. Because again, they only exist. Like Polyjuice Potion is something fun for the kids to find and turn into whatever, and it's a goofy adventure. But if we are supposed to accept that Harry Potter wizarding world's a real world, then you have to ask yourself, why doesn't everybody just use Polyjuice Potion for everything? Well, like that would make things so much more simple. But because like that was made for one specific moment, because it was supposed to be a fun, goofy thing that happened in a magic public school.
In fairness, I will say this: potions is the one part of the magic system that makes most sense because of the ingredients. It's like cooking, the time-consuming aspect of it. And Polyjuice Potion does come into play in the fourth book with David Tennant's character. I forget the character. What is his name? I forget the character's name. It's David Tennant. It's David Tennant's character. He uses Polyjuice Potion to look like Mad Eye Moody. So that is used in the plot somewhere.
So here's my context for that statement is because the big joke, I don't know if anyone here has seen my video essay, but the big joke in my video essay is that I am obsessed with the line from Fantastic Beasts where the character of Tina Goldstein, the ex-magic cop or says the line, "I've arrested half of the people in here," referring to a speakeasy that they're in Fantastic Beasts. And my question is,
Body
if you
Couch
arrested
Jr.,
half of the people...
Sorry.
Huh?
No, the comment said Body Crouch Jr. I forgot the character's name that David Tennant plays. I saw that. Sorry.
But like, the point that I say that is that if Polyjuice exists and you are entering a bar where half of the people presumably want revenge on you, then why did you not use Polyjuice Potion to disguise yourself while going into this bar, which you only went to because you needed information? That's where all of a sudden you have these questions going about in your head, because there are very established, easy solutions that just don't happen because J.K. Rowling doesn't think that broadly about the consequences of her decisions. Like the timepieces. Like the timepiece is like a fun idea for like a one-off adventure, but then she's like, "Oh, I now have to think about larger things. I guess they're destroyed. I
Well,
didn't want them for that."
Polyjuice Potion, I'll give them this. There is an in-universe explanation for that. I think it's a little funky, but there is an explanation that takes like 2 or 3 months or something like that to brew. But then why not just buy it from someone who makes it? You know, that's the question then.
So here's my question: Wouldn't a private CIA FBI level entity like Magical Congress just have this stuff on standby? This seems like a kind of important thing to have when your job is literally to like infiltrate spaces and keep Muggles from discovering your secret.
Well, you need to put the fresh DNA of the person trying to imitate into the drink itself. So they pluck out hair, for example. But like that's why Barty Crouch Jr. keeps Mad Eye Moody in a trunk to pull his eyes out or whatever to get like into his drink. But even then, there's another option. There's tons of spells that you can use just to deform someone. They can look different temporarily, you know, for like a brief interval. So like you can just do that.
Doesn't somebody turn into Lestrange girl like pretty quickly? From what I understand.
Yeah, that was. I want to say
Hermione, I think.
Yeah, Hermione disguises herself. I think that's a Polyjuice thing. I can't remember exactly, but again like,
there are all of these answers. Like these things exist, and this is kind of what I talk about. Like I really, honestly, don't care how much lore I get right or wrong in my video because that's not really the point of my video. The point is that like the lore itself is so contradictory and basically exists in order to prevent conversations like that we're having. Like basically the lore only exists for people to be like, actually my show and my thing is great. Therefore J.K. Rowling to say to people, actually there was always Jewish people at Hogwarts. There was always a gay Dumbledore. Like basically winning arguments after the fact.
Well, Harry Potter.
Actually, I was always great. I always knew these things were going to happen.
Harry Potter's world building, I feel, is built on convenience, like you're saying. I think it very much is, as the plot demands it, this element is created. And, you know, beyond the implications of the immediate, they kind of tone it back a little bit, you know, because she can't. Not that she can't. That's the wrong word. It's not that she can't. It's that she doesn't. That's the key difference. She doesn't take the time to interpret the implications of any given action in the universe. So whenever something happens, they kind of stop the story to allow this magic of convenience to take place. And it's a different thing every time. Like the night bus, for example, exists only out of convenience. And while it's a cool idea, they don't really use that idea ever after that point. They reference characters who they met in the night bus, but they don't really use that ever again as any means to like build the story, at least as far as I can remember anyway. And I'd also it's all good, other things too, like mandrakes. You know, you have the mandrake juice that unparalyzes the people from the basilisk, but we don't see basilisks really ever again until like the basilisk fangs or the sword of Gryffindor show up in the last book. And even the idea of the Chamber of Secrets feels very superfluous until you get to the sixth book. Like up until that point, I remember in the Harry Potter fan communities, most people kind of going, well, Chamber of Secrets, that was kind of like an outlier. It doesn't really tie in with the big plot of the series. And it wasn't until book 6 that became clear what that represented. But until then, it was kind of felt like an isolated little adventure story.
Here's my argument to that, is that I actually, in my perspective, I think all of that's fine. Like, all of those little, like, it doesn't quite make sense. I think all of that's fine when it's just a kid's book about kids at school. Like,
agreed. Yeah.
The point is that, and I'm not like saying kids books are stupid or anything like that. Like that's not the argument I'm making. I'm arguing that Harry Potter, at least at the beginning, was made for a very specific audience in a very specific point. Like I think of them as kind of like fairy tales, where fairy tales don't make all of the sense in the world, but they make enough sense that you can kind of enjoy the story. The problem with Harry Potter's world building happens when she tries to expand these things that were never meant to be expanded upon. They were meant one single, very simple school story, and that's it. They should not exist in any other form beyond that, and that's when they become a problem. But in like the Chamber of Secrets, that's a fun adventure. The kids are on a dungeon crawl. They're gathering gold and stuff. That's fun. But like But again, because it's so contained, it's so simple, and the issues they're dealing with are simple, like good versus bad. They're basically playing a video game. They're playing like a halfway decent D&D game. Like that's what's going on. And when it's just that, then it's fine. The problem is that now J.K. Rowling is forcing it into this large world, and that's when you see all of the flaws.
And the problem also is, and I use Percy Jackson very deliberately in this sense of comparison, is that when you have a book series that ages with your audience, you have to actually have more mature approaches to solutions. And J.K. Rowling's solution for most of the books was she kills a character off at the end of the book, and that adds drama. But like the actual focus doesn't really mature. It just gets longer. Like the idea of fighting Voldemort, that's not new. It just happens to be, all the adults happen to have fought Voldemort in the past, and now they're coming back to do it again. Like that's the mature angle of with the Order of the Phoenix. It's like, all the characters you knew just happened to have been part of a secret club, secret organization that fought Voldemort in the past. The only book that really deals with really mature themes is the third book, The Prisoner of Azkaban, which I will credit as probably the best entry in the series, because it's still a self-contained story like the first three books. It deals with an injustice, a genuine systemic injustice. The problem at play is the system. They win and they lose at the end. So they save Sirius Black, but then Peter Pettigrew gets away, and it ultimately helps bring Voldemort back to life. There is this sense of systemic injustice, of subverting expectations. Harry thinks that his father's going to come and save him, when it turns out it was actually him just time traveled back in time in a closed time loop. That angle of, and you realize that the only person you can depend on to succeed is yourself. You can't wait for a miracle to happen. There's elements of that are very clever, and I will give Rowling this for that
there's
book.
A reason these books were successful.
Exactly.
Like, J.K. Rowling is not bad. Like we read these books for a reason as kids, because they were good.
The problem is The problem is, here's my problem. Ultimately, I don't think the series as a whole succeeds, especially in hindsight, because when you look at each book individually, you think it's building to something, even though the isolated plots. And there's always a mystery in each plot, but the mystery becomes less important as the books go on, because the overarching focus. In the first 3 to 4 books, the mystery, it matters because the plot's resolved by the end. It feels like a satisfying solution come the end of the story. But when your mystery just feeds into the greater conflict, like, does it really matter who the Half-Blood Prince is? Like, how does that impact anything? The fact that Snape kept a secret diary, does that help resolve the plot at all? At no point is the plot's mystery centered on that. It's centered on fighting Voldemort. So the solution to the mystery doesn't contribute to the whole end of the plot. It's just kind of you solve that mystery, okay, but that doesn't tie in with any of the emotional catharsis of the story. It's just sort of mentioned, and there's nothing else to it. The 6th book, I think, also has a whole subplot involving the Minister of Magic, who replaces Cornelius Fudge. Scamander is I forget his name.
No, Scamander's the other.
Scamander's that's from Fantastic Beasts, right? Yeah. I forget his name. He's like a lion guy. He's like an Aslan. He appears like an Aslan type character, when he end up being like just a warmongering, pompous person. I know Bill Nighy plays him in the film.
Okay. Yeah,
so,
I kind of know.
So he keeps trying to get Harry to like support the Ministry, show societal support as basically a poster child for like the efforts to stop Voldemort. And that introduces the idea of systematic abuse, that the people in power are going to use the system to do nothing, to look pretty but do as little as possible. in the face of actual and put like children essentially front and center to deal with conflicts directly. It's something that was done later on. Rufus Scrimgeour, that's his name. Sorry about that. Thank you, Nicholas.
Rufus Wainwright.
Yeah, so Rufus. So, you know, that is an element that was actually used really well in the Hunger Games, using children as figureheads to distract from political incompetence or political actions. The problem is that the books don't go anywhere with that idea. Like, they just kill Scrimgeour in the next book, and then they never mention it ever again. It's like completely unimportant.
Rowling cannot imagine a world where any of these systems change, because as you say, and I say the same thing in my video, that the problem is never the system, it's bad actors within the system. We don't ask why the bad actors are always happening within this system. We're never asked, like, maybe the system that keeps rewarding bad actors to change. It's always, oh, we just need to get rid of this person and then everything's fine.
Exactly.
It's a bad person.
Once we beat Voldemort, that's it. We don't have to worry about anything else anymore.
Because if y'all haven't seen Sean's video about this exact topic, it's please do. It's fascinating.
So I actually have not seen Sean's video. That's the other thing too. People said my video was a lot like Sean's. I don't think I've seen it, which is crazy.
It's really good. Like I kind of use Sean's video as a jumping off point to go as far as possible, because I do argue. And I try to argue this with most of the media that I criticize, is not thinking about things as like mistakes or good or bad, but kind of thinking of like the intentions behind a decision. Like even like you can argue something like, oh, maybe J.K. Rowling didn't know, or J.K. like I'm not as interested in those questions as like how it's being perceived. Like, this is the decisions, these are the things that are happening. What does this mean? What is the film or the book or whatever saying? I don't really care why or how it's saying this, but like, now it's here. We have this content. So that's how I approach Fantastic Beasts, and that's how I approach the Wizarding World. And that's why I kind of open my video with what is essentially kind of like a rant, like a jokey kind of rant, and then I switch off to the second part where I'm like, the reason I did this is because I think the rant helps lead to a point. Like, I think the mistakes and all the problems and all the bad, like, oh, gotcha, actually stuff within the Wizarding World leads to a larger argument. And that's what I try to argue, is that something is being said by how consistently these problems and the kind of problems are consistent enough that emerge within the Wizarding World, and those say a worldview.
Agreed.
Because I think I ultimately argue that Wizarding World accidentally disproves capitalism. So watch my video to find out how I get to that conclusion.
There you go. And the funny thing is, again, the one comment we mentioned that was that we had that was a super chat before also asked about post-colonialist Wizarding World, the Cold War and post-colonialism. Well, I don't think any of it changed anything, because the Wizarding World is very colonial. It's very traditional. And I said in my video as well that I believe the big issue with the Harry Potter universe is that it's overwhelmed by British colonial influence. This kind of Europe as the center of the world, and everything else is an extension around it. And in those types of situations, the system can't be wrong because it's the center of the world.
I think also, if you think about like what era of our world that these books kind of represent as well, like when you go to Hogwarts, it's not like Britain it is today, or even the 90s. It's like this old kind of ancient, almost, dare I say, nationalistic version of what Britain is. Like, it's like the ultimate idea of like a small British town that you would see in like the 1800s or whatever.
Older even. And this is like, again, peak imperialist time for Britain, and peak colonialist time for Britain. That's the vibe. That's the era that's being presented in these stories. You know, we don't see a lot of multicultural kids until like later when she adds them in tweets and things like that. We very much see like an old ancient idea of Britain. And I think that's definitely on purpose. Or even if it's not on purpose, it at least gives this view that like this old kind of imagined version of like British.
it's kind of like Hot Fuzz done real. You know, it's like that idea of, like, this version of Britain is like the most British. This village green-esque ancient kind of situation. And I think that is telling to what we're talking about, that there is this inherent imperialist message within these books.
What I always find strange is that the world never evolved in any way whatsoever. Like,
Exactly.
you know, like it's really strange. Like, I mean, J.K. Rowling mentions that until indoor plumbing existed in the Muggle world, I might add, not the Wizarding world, that wizards would just drop their loons and defecate on the floor, and magic would solve it. Well, how does magic change society? Because there has to be people who are exploring the limits of it, right? You can't learn new spells or new ideas unless it's like scientists or alchemists or mechanics in some way on the outskirts trying to advance it in some way. We even see Arthur Weasley tinkering with an old car, and they don't seem to understand how cars work. Now, certain texts, in the Dresden Files, for example, the reason why they have wizards very deliberately as an old-fashioned people, because technology acts funky around them. They emit like a magical aura that causes technology to act up. So they don't want to touch tech because it's like it's unreliable at best and dangerous at worst. So they just kind of like, I'm not gonna, I won't drive a car, I won't hold a TV. I'm just gonna try using my books and my magic, and that'll be good. Dresden Files has issues too, especially with sexism. But at least they have an excuse as to why wizards don't use technology at all. Because the big joke when Harry Potter was big was that, why don't they just pull a gun on Voldemort? You have an anti-gun spell. You have an anti-bullet spell. Just pull a fire. Walk up behind Voldemort and just shoot him. like no one ever thinks of using Muggle technology. They use swords, so it's not like they're immune to like Muggle weaponry. They use swords. They use arrows. They use slingshots. They use all those, but guns aren't ever used, and there's never a reason why.
I think there is a reason. The reason is to continue the vibe that's being presented by Harry Potter.
Oh,
you
yeah.
had guns that ruins the vibe that and the setting that J.K. Rowling wants to express. She wants like this Robin Hood-esque Britain of like swords and magic. And she wants no telephones. Yet there's newspapers, so I guess it's
the printing presses.
The 1800s. Yeah, who are also the enemy. The newspapers are the evil people in the Harry Potter stories, which is very funny.
And one thing I didn't mention was that Rita Skeeter, this is something I found very interesting. I didn't have a way of including it in my video because they couldn't. It was already over an hour, over 50 minutes long, almost an hour at that point. But Rita Skeeter, who's like the reporter, she's described in a way that is surprisingly reminiscent of how J.K. Rowling currently describes trans people, with like the way, like the she uses mannish hands a lot when describing trans people, and she describes Rita Skeeter having mannish hands in the book, and I found that very interesting. We got into the super chat, but
she loves describing women with mannish features.
It's terrible.
That's something she's done for forever.
We have another super chat, and I'm going to just read that real quick. The Wizarding world works on archetypes. The Hogwarts Express is a steam train because of the romantic aesthetics of steam. It's not modern.
Exactly.
That's true. Yeah, also, exactly. Hi there, Dragon Ball Super Dope. I see you in the comments there under the super chat. It's aesthetic.
Exactly. Yeah, they're used because of the vibe and the setting that they evoke, not because of any particular world building decisions. And I think that's what's really important. And I don't even think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think that's a bad decision as a writer to make. No. Again, the problem is that she wants more from these things, but she doesn't establish them to be compatible with more. Like Fantastic Beasts, at least we see that world of magic seems to at least have gone to the 1920s. So why didn't the British magic world at least get to the 1920s?
Exactly.
Like none of it's about vibe and aesthetic. She's not thinking about the larger implications because she herself as a person cannot think about the larger implications of her own life. She's a neoliberal that hates trans people. She can't imagine anything beyond her rich castle that she owns. I actually gotta use the restroom, but talk to your super chats while I be back.
No problem. I'm gonna get into a topic about science fiction right now. You can't even hear me right now. We're gonna talk about science fiction right now because this comment makes me think of something. So, chat, how are you? You have a good time? You having a good time with this video? I hope you are. Let's talk about aesthetics that create world building, specifically in a little 1980 book known as Neuromancer by William Gibson. In fact, William Gibson is the father of modern-day steampunk along with Bruce Sterling. Now, aesthetics as world building can be done very well. William Gibson knew absolutely nothing about computers when he created Neuromancer, which is the first major work of cyberpunk science fiction. However, after writing that the sky was tuned to the color of a dead channel, he wrote a story that was entirely built on these iconographies. He makes up words. He combines ideas together. He uses imagery that he has no understanding of on a scientific level. He didn't know anything about computers back then. Computers didn't really exist in as a meaningful fashion as do now. The consensual hallucination of the of the net in Neuromancer is entirely his own creation, but it makes sense with internal consistency. Even if scientifically the world doesn't make sense, even if the culture of computers doesn't make total sense with this, the aesthetic internally mechanizes into something compelling and fascinating. And I think it's what separates J.K. Rowling from your William Gibsons, your Tolkiens from your J.K. Rowlings. All right, let's take a look at some more comments here. My favorite thing about that book is people think it's outdated. Well, how many people here know of dead YouTube channels? Well, it kind of. I mean, the dead channel. That's a concept that is very dated. In terms of 80s, that was back when they used to turn channels off at midnight. They thought no one's going to watch TV after 11 o'clock at night or 12 o'clock at night. Once Letterman gets off the air, well, not Letterman, who is it? That would Johnny Carson. Once Johnny Carson gets off the air, let's shut it down. But and again, these are aesthetics that don't really apply to the world of computers, but computer fans and computer enthusiasts, they all draw and incorporate these aesthetics into their own being. The hacker paranoia is consistent. Hacker paranoia is what drives Neuromancer. It's a great book. Yeah, that's a fair point. I know you find it funny. It's all good. By the way, I'm getting these comments a little delayed, so if I respond to a comment after you've sent it 5 seconds later, that's why. But there are other works too that incorporate aesthetics into their world very well from the 90s. I think a good example of this would be something like, say, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. For all of Joss Whedon's faults, Buffy, it cannot be denied, does get the aesthetics of its high school setting and its vampirism very well. And quite frankly, its vampires are really cool vampires.
What did I miss?
We started talking about science fiction and Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
I was a sci-fi kid growing up, so I read I was a big fan of Isaac Asimov growing up, so I read.
Oh yeah.
Foundation, iRobot, and things like that. That was kind of my scene. Ender's Game, stuff like that. Fantasy was something I liked fantasy too, but mm-hmm. I liked a very specific kind of magic. I mm-hmm. liked fantasy that had a lot of magic in it. Mm-hmm. This is so crazy. I remember seeing the first Harry Potter book on a featured shelf at mm-hmm. Barnes and Nobles before it became famous. Just seeing the book.
And just seeing, we have a super chat coming up. Finish your thought. Don't get to the super chat.
Oh yeah, no, it's fine. But I just remember seeing the book and liking the cover, that famous cover of that first book, and telling my parents, "Hey, that book looks cool," and they said, "Oh, but we're leaving the building. We don't have time for that." And I wonder, if I had gotten the book then, mm-hmm. Right at the beginning of it, would I be a huge fan of it now? Because later on, I ended up only reading the first 2.5 books as I got older. So,
mm-hmm. so the super chat is, you into Harry Potter fan fiction or fan fiction in general? If so, you got any recs? So, this is a little known fact.
I mean, My Immortal is everyone should read it.
Easy.
I'm not even making a joke. Easy.
Yeah, I'm not even joking. My Immortal.
Watch the Aeon, the Strange Aeons, which
it's a great video.
Did you say you did? You've done actually no. So one of my friends has done some stuff.
No, I've written fan fiction. I used to write fan fiction when I was younger, especially. In a channel I will not name, on an account I will not name because I forgot the name of it.
I didn't write Harry Potter fanfic, but I did write a single chapter of a Super Smash Brothers fanfic when I was 14 or 15.
Oh no, I didn't write Harry Potter fanfiction either. I wrote Evangelion and Sailor Moon fanfiction.
Ooh, I like that.
I was really into the Evangelion fanfiction scene.
No, I was really into the Smash Bros. Fandom and like fighting game forums. I was on a website called Smashboards. I don't know if
Oh
it
yeah.
still exists.
Wait, do you know about Smash Forms? Maybe maybe
No,
that just shows our age. I don't know.
no, like Smashboards was like the big
Smash boards.
Smash forum. When I was younger, and I was into that, and I was
That was
and so
back
I
in the
wrote a
Brawl
fanfic.
days, right? Like the real, like back when
No,
Brawl was.
Melee. This is Melee. No, this is
Oh, this
Melee.
was Melee.
This is
Okay,
Melee.
I found
Melee
it
was
out
still the
later.
big game. Brawl, we all hated Brawl for a lot of reasons, but that's not the topic of
Well, I'm
this
saying people went
video.
to Smash boards during the Brawl when Brawl was coming out, like in the lead up to Brawl.
That was after me, because when I went there, Melee was the only game in town. That's when I went. Brawl wasn't out yet when I was frequenting these forums. When Brawl came out, I was already kind of on my own personal way out of that fandom and trying to. I realized I wasn't that good, and so I wasn't going to be a champion of the game.
So chat has called me out on something on a different account than the one I was thinking of. Yes, I have written a couple Yuri on Ice fan fictions as a writing exercise and for wholesome reasons entirely. So
That's very
I will not argue that. Anyway, no, that is true. That is true. Chat's calling me out on that. That's a fair thing to call me out on. Yeah, I absolutely wrote Yuri on Ice fan fiction.
I mean, I think we're here. What's crazy about the Harry Potter fandom
still mad
is
about
that
still mad about Ice Adolescence being canceled. I'm still mad about that. I'm sorry. It's totally random. I'm just really pissed off about that.
I'm just mad about the entire thing that they just didn't let it be like a true like BL story. Like they always kind of like played around with it, and they did a lot of like little things to kind of show that this is going to happen, and they never like seal the deal in the anime.
They're engaged. They kiss on live TV.
But it's presented as like joking. The engagement is presented.
It's not presented as joking. They have a sincere moment outside of the. They buy the rings and they have like the ring scene.
I wanted this to be as real as possible, but looking at the larger context, like so much of that can just be kind of dismissed away. And
they push their beds together in the hotel room.
I mean, who hasn't, honestly? You want a big bed.
No, I mean,
here's the thing. I'm not arguing with you. I just think a lot more could have been done. And I love Yuri on Ice, but I wish more was done with it.
Well, we need another season at least. The problem is Mappa. The problem is Mappa chased success. You know, they had their big. Yuri on Ice made them a big deal in the anime industry, and then they decided to get Attack on Titan, Chainsaw Man, Jujutsu Kaisen. And from there, they overworked their animators to the point of them, you know, physically being broken by this intense work schedule. You know, the working conditions at Mappa are horrible.
Every anime industry, too. They're all doing that's awful.
Kyo Animation does a decent job, from what I understand. They do better than most, but that's still... I think that's better than most is still a really rough condition.
There are always exceptions, but for the most part, like anime is like made to basically burn out artists and creatives.
Yeah, it's a meat grinder.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a reason why I forget his name, who created Yu Yu Hakusho and Hunter x Hunter. The reason why Hunter x Hunter has been delayed so long is because it's physically broken his body. Like producing manga has put him in such a physically terrible. Wonder Egg priority was also Mappa. That is also true. Like, he was physically damaged from the strain of creating manga. And, you know, Kentaro Miura, who did Berserk, the type of thing that killed him, it was a stress-induced tear, I believe, in the muscles of his heart. I believe that's it, but it was definitely stress-induced. Know that.
Well, at some point, I want to make a video essay about Bakuman and how it kind of glorifies this behavior. I really want to make a critic because I read all of Bakuman along with all of Death Note. I read all of that, and I think like there is an interesting thing to write about the glorification of like really bad behaviors and ways of doing work. That I think is worthy of a conversation because in Bakuman, which is about
it was Cloverworks. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the comments a little bit while you're talking. Yeah. Wonder Egg was Cloverworks, and Yuri on Ice made Mappa big. And The Worst Witch, I also neglected to mention in my video. That's a good book too. Sorry, as you were. Sorry that.
No, basically, just saying that like I don't know if anyone's familiar with Bakuman. It's the thing that the Death Note people made after Death Note. And it's about it's like a fictionalized version of how they got started in Shonen Jump and the anime manga. industry, and Shonen Jump is like a place that they work, and the editor of Shonen Jump is a character, and all of these things. And it has all of this stuff that we're talking about, but it kind of like glorifies these things as like good, cool things, because it kind of presents this world of making manga as almost like its own kind of battle shonen, where they're all like competing against each other and they're all like fighting against each other as rivals. And I actually, like, looking back at it years later, I do find a lot of it very toxic. And I think it might make an interesting video essay. So that's on the radar for one of my videos down the line for my channel. Look out for the Bakuman kind of is problematic. And also, it's very sexist on top of that. I forgot to.
I was going to say, that's the thing that stands out to me most, the sexism, like, years later. And it's maybe...
Oh, yeah, like, Death Note's sexist, but Bakuman's almost worse in a lot of ways.
Well, I mentioned this in my first video I ever did, and people were upset when I said this. Like, Death Note's a very conservative anime. Like, it's a very... Like, it's not like, you know, like a GOP conservative anime, but like it does have a lot of conservative values in it.
Well, I even argue it's not that good. Like, I read all of Death Note as a kid, and I don't think it's particularly good looking back at it. I think there are moments that are interesting. I definitely think once it gets to the halfway point, it's not good, period, after that, because they never are able to capitalize on the death of spoiler character. And I think it just meanders from that point on. But even the stuff before that I liked when I was growing up, like, looking back, it's kind of dumb. It's really not as interesting as I thought it was as a kid.
I will say this. I think Death Note is actually pretty good, but I also will say that the manga especially has this issue. The anime has the wisdom of cutting down the second half of the story. So...
Sure.
But the anime also cuts out the ending of the story, so that's the trade-off. You know, the ending is
hearing what actually happens in the ending of the anime is frustrating, because I didn't even think it was that good of an ending in the manga, but it's even like worse in the anime.
Oh, I disagree. I think the manga ending's great. I love that Light, this arrogant asshole, is just like, when the chips are down, he is a whining, pathetic. You really see him stripped away. You see the ego stripped away.
But for me, it's too little too late. I think for the most part, like, Light is supposed to be seen as this cool person that you want to be, and you agree with what he's saying. To have that moment, which I agree is a great moment, I wish they had, like, more of that, because you are kind of supposed to like Light, I think. I think the manga wants you to like Light and ultimately agree. You may not agree with the methods, but I think you are supposed to say, Light is
know if I agree with you there. I think he's meant to be like kind of an ego, because even in the first chapter, I don't want to argue with you too much, because I don't want to go into, because this is something that we can go on for hours on its own. But the idea of the first chapter of Death Note is, you know, Light's like, oh, you know, with this book I can end the life of every single evil person in the world, and I can go down the list of people who've been brought into cracked, and, you know, and Ryuk's like, well, if you do that, then you'll be the last bad person in this world. And he's like, what do you mean by that? And it just completely has no clue. He's too arrogant to ever question his own morality. And Ryuk is just like, this is so funny.
But if you look at the people that Light is presented as an antagonistic to his ideas, like L, there is like a coding there to, like, oh, look how weird L is. I do think there is, God, this is maybe controversial, but I do think there is a maybe semi-intentional queer coding of villainy in Death Note. Like, the character of L is so eccentric that you are, I think, on some level supposed to kind of be on Light's side, because like L is the ultimate obstacle to him, but L is kind of presented as this weird kind of whatever character, and I think that is done in a way intentionally for you to as a reader have more of a distance to understanding that character, because he is so kind of like an enigma versus Light, who you are with the entire time, and you understand exactly what Light's motives are and exactly what he's doing. And all of these things.
But I would say all that endears Light, L, I should say, to the audience, because you look at how they first encounter. L plays on Light's ego by using deductive skills to force him to narrow down specifically what region of what country he's in, just based purely on his own skills of observation. And plays on his ego. And I think L immediately is esteemed to the audience because he is shown to be not Light's match, like Light likes to believe, but actually is superior. Because he figures out immediately who Kira is. He figures out where he lives. He figures out everything about it. And the only thing L has to prove is to find the evidence to link the smoking gun, so to speak. So I think that immediately. And the thing also is, you look at how L's presented. He's eating sweets. And he's just like this goofy little guy who just shows up and he does some silly things, but he's also brilliant. I think that element that really esteems. I like L quite a lot. I think L's a really interesting character in Death Note. I think
like L as a character too, but I do think there is some kind of intentionality, especially when you think about like how in Death Note, like anything that's like femme coded or womanly is like looked down upon.
Yeah, well, except for what's her name? Naomi, is that the character's name? Who's like Ray Pember's like fiance or wife who. It's early on in the series. I think that was like the peak moment of Death Note was Naomi. I feel the character's name was Naomi, who she has like a piece of evidence that would link Light to Kira, and she's worked with L previously, and she's going to L to give L the information, and Light intercepts her, and they're just walking and conversing, and the whole thing is like a cat and mouse where Light's trying to get Naomi's name so he can kill her before he can bring this information to Light. And it's just a conversation. It's a very quiet, understated battle of wits, but only one person's playing. And she's really interesting as a character.
That's like the only moment. Like when we talk about that character, like that, it's basically that's it.
Exactly.
The other time you get characters like Misa, who I honestly think is a good character. It's just that they make her like worship this guy because she's like in love with him. And I think that there is to some degree some kind of queer coding or femme coding of characters that you aren't like. L has his way of acting that's not quote unquote normal, that's more quirky. But you look at the replacements of L, and they are a lot more queer and femme coded.
Yeah, I don't like Near Mellow that much.
And it's presented as and I think that is to show that this is the bad guy. Look how different they are. This is weird. I think there is and also here's the biggest effing problem in Death Note, which is that the show never says, at least convincingly, that what Light's doing is wrong. That him killing prisoners and bad guys, it never says, hey, maybe you should not do that, period. It never makes a good argument for what he's specifically doing is bad. They just don't like the way he's doing it. But it still is dehumanizing the criminals that he is killing.
Okay, I don't know if I agree with that part of it. I don't know if I agree with your read on that one. I'll explain why reasoning. And I respect that. I respect it doesn't have the explicit. Yeah. Again. Here's my counter argument to that. There's a great scene at the end where when Light's been exposed and he's now has no means of defending himself, he's been shot by I think Matsuda. I think Matsuda just shot him or was about to shoot him, and he goes in this big angry tirade about like how great Kira has been for society, how he's improved the world, how he's done all this great stuff, and then Nier just cuts him off and goes like, no, you're just a criminal. You're just a murderer. That's it. Like that's all you're doing for all your like your bravado and your self-indulgence. And it kind of illustrates that all that we've seen so far is Light puff himself up, but we've actually never seen Light fix anything. The world is not a better place because of Light. In fact, we've seen more crime happen. And like you have Mello, who has this whole criminal underworld, who's attached to this whole mafia thing. If Light was really good at stopping crime, why is there such a crime element, both in terms of the television systems, in terms of the corrupt cults surrounding him, the mafias that Mello's attached to? And Light only kills captured criminals. He's only getting people who've already been arrested because he has to know their names. Like all the people he's killed, they're either captured or arrested or arrested.
That doesn't go against what I said, though, because in all of these scenarios, we are still seeing these people he's killing as evil and not worth knowing anything about. The point is that these people are captured, but we don't know whether, even if they're guilty, because so many people are arrested for like no reason, and he's just reading it off and killing every single person. The assumption is that the people that he is writing in this book are bad and deserve to die. Maybe not the way he's doing it, but they are bad, which is such, like you said, a conservative way of looking at crime and the policing system. And even that ending you described doesn't contradict that. It just says, oh, you're also killing people along with these bad people. You're just like the bad people. Why are they bad people? You're in each situation, you're assuming that these people are bad that he's killing. It's just the way he's doing it is wrong. But the central argument that these people deserve to be nothing, or that these people are evil, is never questioned. We never look inside the people that he is specifically killing. Or like we never get a scene of like, oh, you know, it would be great if we just had a chapter of somebody getting arrested and being like really scared that they could be killed by Kira because of all that. We never get that sense. We never go into these prisons that he's just randomly killing people, like 100,000 people a day, or whatever he's doing. You know, that is.
I don't know if that's necessarily true in the manga. I feel like there must have been a couple chapters, or a couple panels.
Manga. No, none of this happens.
There's no panels at all? I remember that. Okay.
There's nothing humanizes the criminals. Like the criminals are always just de facto bad. The conflict of Death Note is the way in which he's killing the criminals. That's the only problem. But him killing the criminals or the criminals themselves being bad is never questioned. That's never an argument made within Death Note. And I think that is a big problem because you are supposed to see them as just blank evil livestock. You don't see these criminals as people. Because Light doesn't see them as people.
The problem here is it's been a while since I've read Death Note, so if I'm engaging in this discussion, I want to make sure I've reread the text to make sure I'm not missing anything.
We'll both read all of Death Note and we'll have a debate live on this stream.
Oh, there you go. Do it. Bring popcorn. But the thing
I haven't read it since I was a kid either, so yeah.
But the thing that I find interesting is that, again, and the problem with discussing a text you haven't read in a while is I'm not sure how much of it was myself projecting my own interpretation of the text and how much of it was presented in the text. And that's the trick with any type of interpretation. And again, Light does mention, I do recall this specifically, I'm pretty sure he says this, that once he's killed all the criminals, he's going to move on to any people who he deems as lazy or not helpful to society, which that's where it goes from like the fascism element of it. But again, to your point, that's not the same thing as humanizing the criminals. They do humanize people he kills, of course. Again, Ray Pember, Naomi, L himself, and some of the members of the crew, they're humanized quite effectively.
These are already established characters.
And
like
then the question
they
becomes,
aren't the criminals.
But the
because
question,
they're not.
But the question then becomes, no, it's okay. The question then becomes, is the text reflecting these characters as a point showing Light's gone too far, or is he showing Light's self-indulgent ego for what it ultimately is, self-serving, mission-oriented? So the question there becomes, where's the boundary, right? Where do we go between characters indulging their, again, ego trip or megalomania or cult leader? I'd have to revisit the text to give you a full answer on that one. But my memory of it is...
I do too.
Yeah.
I do too.
But my memory of it's fairly anti... But my memory of it leads into more the manga going against Light than presenting Light as a good person.
I didn't see the anime. I didn't watch the anime. I only read the manga. And my thought was that my impression was that the problem was Light was that he got sloppy at the end. Like, that seems to be the problem that Light has. I don't think if it's supposed to criticize Light, I don't think it does it enough. I don't think it does it in a way that's convincing, because it's very easy to read Death Note and see Light as like a cool guy. And obviously that's a problem with a lot of narratives that are based around antagonistic protagonists. I mean, this is the Wolf of Wall Street problem. This is the Fight Club problem. So I understand all of those elements, but at the same time, it's like, what aspects of Light are we supposed to disagree with? I think that's the big question. Are we supposed to disagree with his methods of killing the bad people, or are we supposed to disagree with him killing people, period, because all people deserve justice? I don't know if that second one is the case. And again, I have to read. What is comments saying? Who's comments agreeing with?
Comments are saying. I'll read some comments here. So one, Miath's reading corner here. He says they say that he pretty exclusively killed financial criminals. A lot of the time.
No, he killed like murderers and rapists too. That was part.
There were a few of those, like on the FBI's most wanted list. Remember, he went through like stuff like that, like those big top 10 world-class criminals. He just read through those lists and just executed them.
No, he killed people that are on like life sentences and all that.
Oh, but Miath is clarifying. It's been a hot minute since I've read that, so with salt, please.
I don't remember financial
again,
people.
I think a lot of us read it That's the thing with Death Note. It's like a lot like with Harry Potter. Going back to the topic of the video, Harry Potter. The big issue is that.
I forgot about that.
Yeah, that was what we came here for. The big issue with that is that because a lot of us read it as younger audiences, it became formative reads for us or formative watches if you watch the anime. And because of that, we took a lot of childhood childhood emotions and projected them onto the stuff. And that's one reason why I think I have a lot of fondness for Sailor Moon, because I've revisited it as an adult and I find it has the same messages as it was when I was a kid.
I love it. No, I watched
great.
all of Sailor Moon.
But Death Note bizarrely haven't revisited since like college or something like that.
Well, it's like, here's what's interesting. Like a lot of these things I did like. Like again, like I loved the first half of Death Note as a kid, and didn't like when L died, because I didn't think it was interesting after L died. I didn't think the villains or quote unquote antagonists to Light ever got as interesting as L. I don't think Nier, or what was the other one?
Nier and Mello.
Nier. I thought they were really bad replacements for L. I didn't think they were as interesting. That was my complaint as a kid. But now that I've gotten older and I've kind of thought back on the stuff I read, it's like, maybe there were like Bakuman. Bakuman was a comic I actually really, really liked when I first read it. But now I'm like thinking back at like the stuff I remember, and it's like, oh my God, there were actually some interesting problems now that I'm kind of remembering what I read.
Yeah. Well,
so a lot of this is kind of retrospect stuff, like kind of looking back and like, oh, maybe the grass wasn't that green, or whatever the phrase is.
Well, one work I really want to do a video essay on, because it's turning 20 this year. I think it'll be sometime in the summer I'll probably get around to making this, is Elfenlied. Elfenlied was a big formative anime. Not the manga as much, but the anime. When I was in high school and college, that's
the really violent one, right? With the girl.
The one with the horns and the psychic arms and the was it psychic sound wave arms or whatever it is.
I've seen a little bit of it. I mean, that opening is so iconic of her just like mowing down the
first 8 minutes are great. It's just nonstop carnage. It's fantastic, but like it is so dumb and so goofy. And what's really funny is, if you watch it dubbed, because ADV did the dub for Elfenlied, and ADV also did stuff like Evangelion, Azumanga Daioh, Excel Saga, and so you're watching this scene, and like if you've seen those shows before, watching Elfenlied, which I did, you'll hear like the voice actors, so it's like, oh, you're in this thing, oh, and now you're dead, and you kind of think, oh well, they wouldn't cast the voice actor of this one character, and they twisted your head off, and now your body's a body shield for bullets, and now you just killed someone with a pen. And it's like, okay, that's great.
No, that's fascinating. I'm always, see, for me, like this is maybe my toxic trait, is I'm always interested in kind of going back and like looking at like the golden geese of anime and media content, and trying to understand if they are as amazing or whatever as we thought they were. Like one of the first,
hopefully I know for a fact is going to be garbage. that has not aged well.
In a previous life, I like to say in the life of my cousin, brother, husband who died, kind of life, I would do these panels at conventions, anime conventions around California, including Anime Expo and Fanime, where I would question a lot of like the established truths. And one of the things I loved to go back to was, is Dragon Ball Z a good anime?
Yes.
Not even like,
yes.
Yeah,
Full stop. Yes.
And here's the answer answer is yes, but my thing is that like it's always assumed to be yes. So like let's actually ask. Like am I okay? I think Dragon Ball Z is bad. Let's go from there. Why is it like? Because here's my thing. And
I'm not going to support you on that one. I'm sorry.
Because I don't
Dragon
care.
Ball Z.
I honestly don't care what your opinion is either way. But my thing is that you go into these fan spaces and you get these opinions that are considered like law that basically that are basically written on the 10 commandments of this is how it is. And I was always more interested in thinking like, well, why do we think that? Have we actually thought like, if we say Dragon Ball Z is the best thing ever, why? Are we just saying that because that's the consensus, or we actually truly believe? And I do that because I want to expand the conversation about these things and not just love something because it's the assumed truth of the fandom to love this.
Oh yeah.
But like, if you love Dragon Ball Z, like, argue why you love it. Don't just because it's like the one I watched when I was a kid, or it's the one everybody says.
Oh, 100%.
Like, don't say it because of those reasons. And that was kind of my argument, is that most people were kind of saying it for that reasons. And I personally am not the biggest Dragon Ball Z fan. I don't want to have that conversation with you today.
Oh yeah, that's a bad one to have with me because I adore Dragon Ball Z. But I get you. I realize.
But that's kind of like what I try to say. Like, hey, let's kind of think broadly about what we're talking about. This actually leads perfectly back to Harry Potter.
Actually, I was thinking the exact same thing, actually, because what you're saying is entirely why I did the video. You know, and again, we're both critics. We both
exactly.
I mean, almost. You know, we write. We understand this kind. Not that we understand this kind of stuff. We discuss this kind of stuff. This is the kind of way our brains are programmed to look at media in a way that is critical. Not criticizing, but critical.
I think of myself as more of like an analyst. Like, I like to critically analyze
fair too.
And think about things. Like, when I think of like of a critic, I'm thinking whether something is good or bad, and that's kind of the least interesting question to me sometimes.
Yeah, no, agreed.
Whether like if this is good, like for me, I want to know why something is like it is and what it's trying. Like I graduated with a film degree from UC Santa Barbara.
Mm-hmm.
I studied a lot of theory, and this is what I like. I like to look at something and say, what is this saying? What's the point of why is this? To me, that's more interesting than just me saying, it stinks, or
exactly.
Kind of thing. Yeah.
And the thing also is, I've written film like published film reviews. I think actually one of my things for one of the they've been on posters, I think, and so a couple of different films, and the methodology I always employed when criticizing a piece of work was always a 3-question system. And it's not my original system. Someone in college mentioned this system, and I've loved it so much I've used it for everything I've done ever since. The first, you have to ask yourself 3 questions with any piece of media. The first question is, what is this media trying to accomplish? Like, what's its thesis? What's its goal? What is it trying to relay to the audience? So, for example, you don't watch a horror movie and go, well, the love story wasn't all that good. Like, that's not really the point. The point is to frighten you, or to tell us a meaningful discussion about some cultural fear. Okay, so that's question number 1.
I agree. Yeah.
Question number 2, what did the artists do to communicate this idea? That includes the writers, the set designers, the actors, writers, cinematographers, all the people involved. So animators, if it's animation, the editor, even if it's a book. And you go, okay, so the acting choices were like this. Here's how they tried to communicate that. Here's the set design was to do this. The camera was, and you look at all the different components as to how the idea was communicated. And then the third question, what did the artists do that impeded the vision, that got in the way of the vision? So a great example of this, let's use Harry Potter as an example for that. They wanted to create a story. So J.K. Rowling wanted to make a story that was a magical school, like an escapist magical school. In terms of themes, they talked about death as a core theme, love, the power of love, the necessity and the pain and necessity of death, and to communicate a world that was wizardly, otherworldly, that you could escape to. An idea that you were special because you were part of this exclusive other world. And everyone in their mothers has said how they accomplish this. They show magic. They show these wild and zany things. They show a whole group of schools and different houses that you belong to, and you can align your whole personality to if you so got in. And you have villains. The main villain hates love and fears death. And because the main characters...
not love.
Exactly. Like, love is an alien concept to them,
Yeah.
to Voldemort. And so because of that, you have a core identity. The core themes running through the show, the whole series, is love is good and death is sad but necessary. Those are the core. And Harry, when he has to, at the end of the day, to beat Voldemort, has to willingly die and come back, like many Masonic heroes. But that's not my issue with Harry Potter. That stuff is there. And that is effectively communicated in the text. The problem is the contradictions internally. It's escapist, but only for certain people. And if you're not the right kind of person, you're bad. And you're aligned immediately with the bad guy. Love is good, except if you don't love the right way, then you're bad. Voldemort's conceived essentially through a date rape situation, and they never elaborate on that. The mother, like Voldemort's father, is like love potioned into being with Voldemort's mom. And
I don't remember that.
It's basically like
cool,
magic
so
roofing. Yeah, and it's like
love potions exist. Nobody ever talks about this.
Oh, the love potions are a reoccurring thing in Harry Potter, and they're just kind of made as this magical, whimsical joke, when the implications are really deeply disturbing, and they just kind of gloss over it.
I want to say I have also heard that same method that you're talking about within my experiences. My only difference is that the last question is, did they succeed in presenting that vision?
But I don't like the question, did they succeed? Because did they succeed is so yes or no. What I think it's more interesting to say what gets in the way than yes or no, personally.
Well, I mean, that also, but also saying gets in the way suggests that something got in the way when maybe that's not actually what happened. I think it, I think the idea of like, did they succeed or not, it still gives agency to the creator as somebody saying they did this. Did they get it right?
That's
valid. By my perspective, I think it's just a different way of, but it's generally the same idea though, where you want to try and understand what the film wants to accomplish, which is a subjective opinion. That's me trying to think about, okay, I think this is trying to say this. I think it's doing that because of this, and this is why I think it succeeds in doing so. Which is how I kind of start out my Harry Potter video, where I kind of talk about here are the themes I think the film is concerned with. Here's why I don't think they succeed at accomplishing these themes, and then I go further than that, which goes into like more critical analysis, critical theory kind of thinking, where I go, what does it mean that these things did not work? Like, what is the larger idea? Instead of just saying, oh, J.K. Rowling screwed up, she wrote a bad thing. Instead of simplifying it to that and saying, oh, it's a bad script, thinking, let's pretend everything was intentional, even if it wasn't. Let's pretend all of these things exist as intentionality, and everything within this text is where it should be and should exist where it is. What does that mean? What does that mean? Just to think of everything as intentional, as whatever it is. What does that mean this story is telling? And that's when I argue that the story is accidentally disproving a lot of Western ideals in a way that's hilarious, because J.K. Rowling absolutely believes in these Western ideals, but I think because how it's presented, it's almost a satire because of how bad it's presented. Again, an unintentional satire, because J.K. Rowling was not trying to do that. But again, I'm looking at the work as itself, as an inherent body of itself.
Well, I would say to that, and here's my counter argument. Again, like with all things, I always got to argue with everyone. Apparently, that's the Italian in us. It's bad.
Why do you hate me?
Nah, you're great. You're great. It's we're both Italian. This is how it works.
I know. Don't have two Italians on a stream. That's what's gonna happen.
Italians will argue over the frickin' sky color, as you have probably seen Italians argue over it, and I myself have argued over it.
If you want to argue with an Italian woman, this is what happens.
This is how it happens. This is how it goes. This is how it goes down. Yeah. No, I'm from New Jersey. I know what I'm talking about. I'm like, I have the most Italian last name possible. It's ridiculous. Anyway, what was I gonna say? No. So what my argument is that I don't think it's clear enough to be satire, because you look at like.
Oh yeah, no, I agree. Because
Rowling, to your point,
I agree with you.
To your point, what Rowling does that is it's not a trick. She's not trying to pull the wool over your eyes, but she does it anyway. Is that she distracts you with this theme of love, with this theme that death is a serious thing, and it takes your eyes off of the systemic issues that are just going on in the work that impede in its core message. So communicating that love's important. That's great. Unless it's a half elf, well, a half elf. I'm mixing D&D lore into this. A house elf. Sorry, I'm getting my Forgotten Realm stuck in with my Wizarding World. You look at Dobby, for example, a character who is given this emotional send off. It's sad when he sacrifices himself to save Harry. Yet he's also the butt of jokes that he wants to be get paid for his work. Mm-hmm. It's considered a big deal that he wants to get money for working and laboring himself.
And also that he wants to be freed is considered a freak position for a house elf to have.
Yeah, it's radical.
It's radical. And I want to point out
John Brown action there.
I want to point out that I actually 100% agree with you. The idea of it being an accidental satire is just more of a fun thing I like to think about. It's not an actual argument I even make really in my video, because I agree with what you're saying. I agree that it's not strong enough to be even an accidental satire, which is why I actually wrote some of that into my video essay and cut it, because I'm like, okay, no, this is not a great argument. I don't even believe it that much myself. My thought was more this is for me, I was kind of thinking almost like Starship Troopers a little bit, sometimes watching Fantastic Beasts in that way of saying oh, a lot of weird bad stuff happens. It's just that it's intentional. It's intentionally bad in Starship Troopers because it's a parody of fascism, while it's just told as it's just unexamined in Fantastic Beasts. Not to spoil my video essay too much if you haven't seen it, but I get to this argument that things work out in Fantastic Beasts even though they should not work out in Fantastic Beasts, and everything kind of goes to where it needs to be for the story to progress, even though by all accounts it should not have reached that point. And I kind of compare it to almost like a biblical text where the text just kind of happens because God makes it happen. This is when I get to my weird larger argument in my video essay of J.K. Rowling is kind of playing God, but because she's playing God, she's making a text that can't actually make sense unless there's an It makes more sense in my video than me just doing a very brief version of it here.
Yeah, and plus the thing also with Fantastic Beasts, and this I didn't really discuss Fantastic Beasts in my video because I really want to focus on the books of Harry Potter more than the cinematic versions of it. Yeah. Even though I use cinematic clips because you have to have a video somehow. You have to have footage somehow in a video.
For me, I feel like Fantastic Beasts was always kind of this black sheep that nobody ever talked about. When I talked about the first Fantastic Beasts movie, most people were like, I remember it being fine. I don't have any strong memories. Or be like, oh, it was okay. Nobody really had any. And I'm like, it's actually really bad. And I kind of bring it up. That's kind of why I wanted to talk about it, because it was one of those things that nobody really brings up when it comes to talking about Rowling's universes. Right.
But what I'm going to say is a little more about the second and third movie, that they're incoherent. They're just badly told. They get bad.
Worse and worse. I'm not going to make a follow-up video.
No,
I'm not making a video about Fantastic Beasts 2 and 3 because they're some of the worst films ever.
But it's baffling how they're bad. Yes. It's not even that they're just bad. It's bizarre how they're bad, because the first one is a narrative.
Is unwatchable.
Yeah, well, I would say they're both unwatchable. You look at these movies, and the first movie is a linear story. It has a 3-act structure. You start with your central character. He's on a mission. He accomplishes this mission, and there's a bigger conflict he falls into. It's wishy-washy and it's goofy and it's not great, but it's. At least
it's also too overstuffed for it to. I mean, it does achieve those things, but it achieves those things by sheer force of will, because the actual story of what's happening is anything but a 3-act structure. The script. It's such a bad movie that it just kind of forces them into these positions of a 3-act structure because they need to happen for the story to happen.
Right.
That's kind of my yeah, exactly.
That is true. That is very true. But it's still a 3-act structure, is what I'm getting at.
No, I agree. But even
movies 2 and 3 are not. There's no structure to it.
Yeah.
It just scenes happen. They don't really seem to add up in any meaningful way. Characters show up. They have 4 lines. They go away. It's some of the worst script writing from a novelist who was credited for
The
her
worst-
mystery writing. You know,
Some of the
essentially.
worst directing too. Some of the worst editing I've ever seen. There's a lot
Yeah.
of moments in this. Even the first one's really poorly edited, but the second one especially has some moments that I'm like, how did that get through post?
And,
How
like,
did that get through?
And you look at like the color in each of the scenes and the way it's shot and the way it's so, people
I
make
don't know
fun.
why David Yates hates color so much. I don't
People
know
make
why
fun of Marvel for like their color grading. Like, this is so much worse. This is like everything is so washed out and drab.
It's
And
awful.
like,
Oh my
this is a
God,
magical world. Why does everything look like there's no vibrant? People were saying in the comments, "Oh, you know, I don't like the books, but I like the movies." I don't like the movies either. Like, most of the movies are just, with the exception again of, and again, this is funny. So, with the exception of The Prisoner of Azkaban, which I think is by and away the
Directed
closest.
by Alfonso Cuarón, one of the
Exactly.
greatest directors of all time. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I think the book and the
I
movie
even
for
think,
both
I
are
even
the high
like
point.
Christopher Columbus's first two.
Yeah.
I use a lot of footage from the first couple movies, and just like looking back at that footage as I was making my video, I'm like, this is cute. This is fun.
Yeah.
This is a cute little kids movie. This is a cute movie.
And again, the John Williams score goes a long way. You know, that does a lot.
Probably one of his last great scores, I would say. Like,
But
incredible.
what else did
job.
you do after I'm trying to think if you did anything else like that was like really big after because I know he worked with Spielberg a lot, but like, and of course did Star
Not that big.
Wars.
I mean, I personally really like his score on Catch Me If You Can, but I don't think that was a very big score.
Well, there was also the Star Wars movies and in most recent Indiana Jones. I would say like some of his songs in the most recent
But
Star
a
Wars
lot of that,
trilogy is good.
but a lot of that is because of the original work that he did on those movies.
That's true.
Like, I feel like as a new property being created, I feel like Harry Potter was kind of his last like great, everyone knows that score by heart score.
Yeah, I'll give you that. That's fair.
It's not that important. This is just my thoughts. It's not even close to what we're talking about.
Yeah, and again, I think his Star Wars score is very underrated. I think I'll get into this more in my video this Friday, which is going to be a shorter video after the Harry Potter video because I think it's only a half hour as opposed to 50 minutes because I just didn't have the time to do another hour long. I just didn't have the energy.
I don't understand how people do 2-hour videos because, like, I originally
we just did a 2-hour video technically. If you want to be really technical about it, but does that count because we're streaming it?
Oh, if it's live, then I can do it no problem.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
I can talk for days by myself. But like making a video, like my original draft of my video, like I thought it was gonna be an hour and a half. And by the time I was done editing it all together and cutting so many things that just didn't work once I saw it, I was barely making an hour.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so I don't get how people make these long videos because I'm like, I'm a professional editor. Like, I do this for a living. I get paid to do this. So, like, it's weird for me to, like, I can't have any excess. Like, if something doesn't work or is over-explaining or too much, I have to cut it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I can't have any fat in that sense.
No, yeah.
So it's hard for me to make, like, for me, like, most arguments I want to make, I can do in 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, in order for it to be an hour, which my latest video is, I have to just have multiple arguments. I have to have, okay, I'm talking about this thing, and now I'm talking about a second thing. Otherwise, these movies, these video essays wouldn't be an hour.
Exactly. Well, that's my strategy too. And you look at like the really good long video essays. Like again, using H Bomber Guy is a great example. He changes arguments every chapter.
Mm-hmm.
He's not making
like
one.
yeah.
He's not making
I
one
love
argument. He's fantastic, but he does something really clever. He doesn't make one argument. He makes 7 arguments, and they're all in the same video. And each argument really is about like a 15, 20-minute segment, and that argument ties in with its overall thesis. And that's where I come in with it.
Yeah. Another one is Noah Gervais is another one.
Oh,
I
yeah,
would
yeah.
say. It's amazing. Because he makes these videos that are like hours and hours long, and it's all good. There's no filler. He's just one of those genius guys that can do it.
And that's one thing also. That's why and as much as I don't want to shit talk way more successful creators than myself. But that's one reason I could never do the
start beefs.
That's one reason I could never watch get into like Quentin Reviews' videos because they're just like when he did like hour-long videos that was great, but when he started doing 7 14-hour-long, he had like a 36-hour video. I didn't think he could do that.
That was a parody. That was a joke video.
Yeah, but he still made it. It's still a 36-hour-long video. I don't care if it's a parody or not. He still made it.
Well, like he has like an iCarly video that's like 4 or 7 hours or something like that. I mean, I don't care that much about. iCarly, and again, like I know people that love Quinn reviews, and they say, oh, it's worth it. Like every minute of that 7 hours is great. But like, yeah, like generally, if I'm gonna watch something that's that long, it has to be like the best thing ever. It
You
has
got
to
to
be
do something
somebody
really
that,
well. Yeah.
yeah, there can't just be moments where I'm like, why are you making this 7 hours when this could have been an hour?
Hmm. And
You
again,
know, and
like,
I feel
yeah,
like a lot of famously, I think bad video essays are just long for the sake of being long and for the algorithm, and you can tell that difference. Um,
yeah, yeah. I'm thinking of a specific creator, in particular, known for
I think
making long videos.
is it someone you've talked about on your channel before?
No, actually, I don't think I've ever mentioned them on my channel. I've kind of avoided even mentioning their name because they have a really angry fan base, and I don't want to deal with that.
I
I'm
think
not. I'm not saying I'm I'll message you later. I'll tell you who I'm talking about later.
I think I know who you're talking about.
Yeah, I don't want to. I don't want to. I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to deal with them. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. So I actually I want to, because I know we've been going for 2 hours. I want to make
Yeah.
one more have one more conversation, one more kind of
Definitely,
strong
yeah.
argument that I want to make. But I'm gonna use the restroom one more time.
Of course.
And then I want to have a before we leave. There's something I want to talk, because I watched your video before I came on here, and it made me think about something that's been a very big part of my current analysis on popular media that I kind of want to talk about with you, because it also involves some videos I'm working on, and hell, if I ever wrote a nonfiction book, this would be the topic of the nonfiction book. But
Oh yeah.
that's the preview. I'm gonna go pee.
All right, you go. Make sure you take care of that. I'll talk to chat right now, and we'll discuss some things while you're gone. Hello, chat. Welcome again. You're welcome back to my channel. I'm now in control once again, so I'm going to read some comments that are filtered in. John Williams did music for Star Wars, Indiana Jones, E.T., Superman, Harry Potter, and The Patriot. All great soundtracks. Logan Manson Games said that. I think personally of John Williams' scores, and this might be a controversial opinion, my favorite of John Williams' music is his Superman theme. Superman is my favorite John Williams score, and they are, aside from like the big, the big triumphant element, the moment that always hits me the most, I might have mentioned this on stream before, is the scene where Pa Kent passes away. There's this big, there's like this big sweeping score as they pull out from the grave, from the tombstone, and they go over the cornfields. It's so moving and powerful. Also, his soundtrack for Schindler's List and Jurassic Park are also fantastic as well. I can talk. Okay, so let's look at more comments. Me asks, reading quarter. I can talk for hours to a camera. I have no idea if I could do that. Well, we just did that now. I did that last week with my video response to my Stellar Blade video, and I'll tell you this right now. I actually was in pain when that video was done. Talking nonstop at the pace I was talking at actually hurt my lungs, and I felt pain in my chest the next day afterwards because of how fast I was talking and how I wasn't coming up for air. So it was kind of like pushing my lung capacity to its limits. Like, even hear me now, kind of going and going and going. That for 2 hours, that caused me some pain. My longest was Dear Evan Hansen. Okay, so Cinemageddon reviews. My longest was Dear Evan Hansen movie video essay, which I had to split into 4 because Universal didn't want me uploading it. Screw Universal. Well, listen, this is why I'm always careful with clips, and that's why I'm using more still images with my most recent essays, because I actually got with the Harry Potter thing, I had to re-upload it. I had to re-upload Harry Potter because I mentioned this in the video. There's like a segment where I had the scene with the time turners where in Azkaban where they used the time turner, and that sequence was a little longer. And actually, when I first started doing video essays, I got a message from Pillar of Garbage, who's a really good YouTuber. He gave a shout out to my videos once, and I was really happy about that. Because I was asking advice on Twitter saying, hey, I'm doing a video essay. Any established video essayists, what do you think to do? And he said, listen, when you put clips out on YouTube, split them up into 9 seconds at most, because the bots, that's what they look for, the 9 seconds or above. And every time I've gotten a copyright thing, it's been over 9 seconds. So you know what? A Pillar of Garbage, I owe the success of my channel to, because it's also forced me to be more conscientious with editing as well. So, that helps a lot. So I owe a lot to Pillar of Garbage for this channel. And give a shout out to my video. So that was really cool. The media you grew up with is woke one with the X-Men 97 on the cover. That's on the thumbnail. Yeah, no. Only good HP film is Prisoner of Azkaban. I would say the only good HP Harry Potter story is Prisoner of Azkaban. The book too, I'd say, is pretty decent. Of all her books, I think that's the one that comes closest to being really good. So we are back with Madeline May here, telling me
Madeline.
I'm sorry, Madeline. I'm sorry.
Did I miss anything interesting while I was?
We were mainly talking about John Williams scores. What's your favorite John Williams score? I'll tell you what I said after you give an answer.
It's a hard question.
It's tough. There's a lot of good ones.
I think E.T.
You think E.T.? I said Superman.
Superman's good.
Yeah,
I think. Yeah. I agree. Like
minor
that's
themes.
a good one too.
The only part of Superman I don't like is the scene where Lois and Superman are flying, and you have the weird poem song thing that
Okay. Yeah.
It's like, what is going on? Like, what? Like, just cut it. Just axe it. There's no need for that.
I mean, the Superman movies are interesting. They're definitely entertaining. Some of them are close to being like really good, perfect movies, but there's always like even the second one, like not Wrath of Khan.
No, just Superman 2. It's just called Superman 2.
It's just called Superman 2.
Yeah.
Like there's
Quest for Peace is the fourth one.
Yeah. There's just like parts where you're like, this could have been really good or perfect. There's, it's interesting. At least those early Superman movies.
I still think Henry Cavill could have been a great Superman if given the right script. Like he had all the makings of a great Superman, and you can see moments in Man of Steel where you're like, oh no, he's a great Superman. But it's just he was saddled with a garbage script. Anyway,
I mean, I know you've done a stream about Zack Snyder.
Oh, I've done a couple things on Zack Snyder. In fact, I'm going to do another Superman thing coming up. Now that we know that My Adventures with Superman is coming out this month, I'm going to do a Superman video sometime later this month as well.
I still that's the cartoon, right?
It's the cartoon, yeah. I adore that cartoon.
It looks so good. I still got to catch up on that. I haven't seen that one yet.
It looks
like my wheelhouse.
Oh, it is fantastic, and quite frankly, is one of those movies where the characters all look adorable, and you just want to like.
Oh my God!
You're not sure if you love them or if you are feeling other things towards these fictional characters.
No, it gives me like Shira remake vibes, which I really like.
Yes, but all the characters are adults, so that's the benefit. They're all in their 20s.
Hey, look, some of them are adults in Shira.
That's fair. That's fair. I think they age too on the show.
I think Entrapta is in her 20s in Shira.
I think Shira ends the series in her like either 19 or 20. I think. I'm not sure when she starts off it. Again, it's been a while since I've seen it.
I'm not even talking about like personal attraction. I just really like the characters a lot.
Oh no, the characters in Shira are great. They're great characters. We had this discussion too.
We've had this. I would die for Entrapta. She is my ideal in goals.
You were like the third person to say they would die for a character in Shira. I think.
That's honestly
I think Jazzy and Chloe also have said variations of that as well.
I at least know one of those people. That absolutely tracks.
Oh yeah.
But for me, like that was kind of what made me realize that I was on the spectrum, was that like all of my favorite characters are some sort of neurodivergent coded. Whether it's Entrapta or Peridot from Steven Universe, another one of my favorite characters ever.
Who's your favorite Sailor Moon character?
Ray.
Yeah, this all adds up. Though I'm sure it's for different reasons.
I love Ray.
Ray's great. I love Ray. No, Ray's great. We actually that was what we were talking about before the stream started. We got this. We almost were late to the stream because we're talking about Ray from Sailor Moon.
My thing is that I am really obsessed with like long hair. I don't know why, but like even like before transition, like I was obsessed with any anime character that had like exceedingly long hair. I don't know. For some reason, that was something that stuck in. I don't know if that was because like I was presenting as a boy and I myself wanted long hair for myself, but like I just instantly loved any character that had really long hair. And so Ray was like perfect for that situation. And then also just learning Ray's character after that was like, oh, I also just like who she is. But
did you like Mistress Nine from Sailor Moon as well? She's like the big bad of S who has like the freaking like carpet hair. Like the hair all the way down to Pluto.
That's a Sailor Pluto, evil version of Sailor Pluto.
Sailor
right?
Saturn, yeah. That's like Saturn, it's like Hodorou.
Sailor Pluto also has long hair. Like
she has great hair too.
And I don't know. Again, like I think like for my pre-transition era, like I couldn't really experience feminine things for a lot of reasons. So like I would just be like really into like long hair, even though I had short hair at the time. But yeah, that even today, I'm still that's my weird fetish kink, I guess, is that I want my hair to be like Rapunzel length, and I like seeing Rapunzel length hair. That's my weirdness. But anyway.
That's not the weirdest thing I've heard.
Oh no!
Listen,
I don't
I
think so
used to be
either.
bombarded
Yeah.
by the Comicsgate guys, those like alt-right idiots
Oh
who like hate
no!
people. I saw, and they put their weird kinks on Maine. Maine, they forget
Yeah.
their likes are public. I've seen some weird things. Long hair
Oh,
is not even in the
absolutely.
running.
But
And I'm not even talking
anyways,
like normal DeviantArt things. I'm talking like weird things. I'm talking like really out
yeah,
there.
no, I
Not
understand
the
that.
kink
What
shame, but I will kink shame them.
yeah, my tastes are tame in that sense, but I've always been very attracted to long hair, exceedingly long hair especially, and that's something I'm trying to do. I'm trying to grow out my hair to that floor length, and I will hate it, and I'll probably cut it after I do that. But that's
Look at you, Madeline, with your blue hair and pronouns.
I know. I finally have it. I didn't have pronouns until now. It's so nice to finally have identity.
Yeah,
But
because
like,
that's a concept that only trans people have, and no one else.
you're
The
jealous. You're jealous
grammatical
that
construction of pronouns.
we get all the pronouns and we don't. There's not enough. They're like everyone else is like Oliver Twist. Like, please, can I have some pronouns, sir? And
It's so
there's
ridiculous, man. It's so ridiculous. Anyway, so
it's
what
so
was your
funny.
question you're gonna ask? 'Cause I know, otherwise, we'll just deviate on this topic for the next 7 hours.
Oh yeah, no, here's not even a question. Here's a point that I wanted to make. Because it's something I thought about while watching your video. Because it's something that I've been thinking about a lot for a number of years, and I'm going to be making several video essays around the topic. And like I said, if I were to ever write just a nonfiction book, this is probably going to be what it's about. You talk about how Harry Potter is very vague with a lot of its elements. That a lot of its elements aren't particularly well explained versus like a lot of the more intricate magical worlds that have like very specific rules and things that like I agree with you make those pieces better. But I do wonder if the vagueness of Harry Potter is not also a contributing factor to the success of Harry Potter. And the reason I say this is because I've been doing this kind of analysis on modern media, specifically like modern, very popular media. And I've been looking at this idea of, I mean, for a lack of a better way of explaining it, like the fan fictionication of modern media. And what I mean by that is that I have this theory, this kind of idea that media on the whole is becoming more vague on purpose, where a lot of the work being done into what a piece of work means and who the characters in a piece of work are being put onto the fans of the work instead to come up with their own ideas and opinions of what's happening. And when I was watching your Harry Potter video, that made me think, oh, maybe there's a reason why queer people put so much of our loves into Harry Potter was because there wasn't anything there. So we kind of like, because it wasn't specifically anti anything or whatever, we kind of filled in those gaps. And I have been kind of working on this idea of media and certain properties becoming, I don't want to say hollow, because I mean I do think it's ultimately a bad thing, which I'll explain later. But like this idea of like the meat of media being taken out because of the assumption that the audience, the viewer, is going to just fill in those details. So something like Harry Potter, is absent a lot of details because I think the idea is you want the largest audience possible to enjoy something like Harry Potter.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have a vagueness to Harry Potter and you don't really explain like what it means to be queer or whatever in Harry Potter, that means that you get fans that kind of put that stuff into Harry Potter, but at the same time, you're still appealing to the homophobes that you want to also enjoy your media. This is kind of the ultimate larger point, because I make this argument specifically about stuff like modern Marvel superhero movies and a lot of the, and this is not an anti-Marvel video by any stretch.
No.
But I think but it's more like the Disney live action remakes have this phenomenon that we would joke about constantly introducing like the first gay character.
Yeah. Well, I think let's actually take a step back just so I can make sure you address some points one by one, because you're saying a lot, and there's a lot of a lot of interesting ideas. I want to make sure I give each one its due.
I could write a thesis about this because I've been thinking about this for so long.
Of course, yeah. And there's a lot of interesting ideas you're saying. I want to make sure I address everything because it's a lot. And if I miss anything, point it out and I'll jump right to it. So regarding Harry, first off, your first point, Harry Potter being deliberately more open to interpretation, so it's so that the audience does some of the legwork, right?
I would even go further, and I would even say being deliberate is maybe even a mischaracterization, but that's unintended.
Well, it's a factor that contributes to its success, we'll say.
Exactly. Yeah, it's something that the piece does, whether it's intentional or not. I cannot say. I don't know Rowling's brain, but it's what happens. It's the effect that's created by the work.
Yeah. And I'm actually thinking of Sailor Moon, actually, because we were discussing Sailor Moon before. Sailor Moon, its magic system is entirely nebulous. A lot of it's deliberately not shown. It's just you see elemental alignments, but it's never explained how that actually makes any sense. It's like pure hearts and silver crystals, and it doesn't make a lot of sense when you look at it from the lens that you would look at Brandon Sanderson's magic systems. But it works because it's a very loose magic system, and it is driven ultimately by imagination. Right. The world is never meant to be taken that seriously.
And that's not even really what I'm talking about. It's more just like you talk about in your video that everybody wants to go to Hogwarts. Everybody wants to be a student at Hogwarts. And because like how that happens and how that works is so vague, people can kind of just place themselves within Hogwarts and do whatever they want because the magic.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. You're talking about like the self-insertion factor of it, where it's like because it's so general, because it's so applicable to any individual, that they become. It's easier to self-insert into that narrative.
That way, you can have like fans kind of making their own version and content that contradict each other, but because the rules are so vague, it allows for this. I mean, this is the basis of all fan fiction and all kind of stuff. Like this is how fans build this up. But my argument is that I do think this is to some degree this is kind of how just stories work. But my argument is that catering to this idea specifically is a more recent phenomenon that you can go back to something like I think of Sherlock as a great example of this, where it's like not telling people, and it's also Sherlock is also a reason why this ultimately doesn't work, where if you keep details vague enough, you can achieve an audience, but eventually you do have to explain something and pay off something. But until you do that, you leave enough speculation for people to create whatever mindset that they want into what you're making. And that creates interest and that creates profit for your work. Sometimes even unintentional and unpaid marketing by the fans. But eventually you do have to say something.
I think we're diving on a couple different topics here. I want to address each one because it's a couple different. Because there's this is really interesting. There's a few different ideas at play here. So first, let's look at the self-insertion element. Yeah, I think it's a big contribution to its success. Now, for the fan theorizing element, that's what you're talking about with Sherlock, right? Where you're talking about like how Sherlock survived and how they ultimately make fun of the audience for even speculating how Sherlock survived when season 3 starts. So like season 2 ends with Sherlock jumping to his demise, and it looks like he's gone. Ends with him surviving. How did he survive?
I was thinking more of like the speculative romantic elements.
Oh, that angle too. Yeah, well, that's shipping. That's entirely shipping. And again, that's also made fun of in the first episode of season 3.
But I think that shipping element that's made fun of, but is also played up on. I mean, I think queer baiting fits into this also as well. This idea of providing enough information that it gets people excited about something, but also does not alienate the other audience, which is the audience that don't want to see anything homosexual or anything whatever within an audience. So
we saw that in Supernatural as well. You know, all the queer baiting for was it Castiel and Dean, and
yeah, exactly. Another great example.
And it ends with one of them going to super hell, and the other one dying, and the brother getting a really bad wig.
I think there's narrative implications. Like I think you can trace this back to the J.J. Abrams idea of the mystery box narrative, where you don't.
Oh, I think you can trace it back further than that. I think you trace all the way back to the early Star Trek fandom, back in the '60s. You can really, and arguably before even that.
Here's the difference: is that I'm not even specifically the fandoms. I'm thinking about the properties themselves feeding this. The properties themselves creating a purposefully vague, interpretable world that people can kind of put themselves into without ever doing a full. This is what's happening. Like and that's what I think. Like something like the J.J. Abrams. This is this idea of like investing in something that could be good, but the anticipation of what could happen becomes more important than what does actually happen, which is why nobody was happy with Lost when it ended, because it never was able to build up on those intentions. So my kind of argument is this idea of like when you're trying to get the largest audience possible, because you're a big corporation, you're making these blockbuster films, and by the rules of capitalism, you have to make more money each year than the previous. You can't make the same amount of obscene money. You have to make more obscene money every single time. And because of that, you have to reach a larger and larger audience. There is no other way to keep making more and more obscene amounts of money. So,
by the way, I just want to add, I am hearing some thunder in the background, so if my stream cuts out, that's why. But we're going to keep going until it's done.
Yeah, absolutely. Hopefully you will not die.
Yeah, I just want to point it out. In case my stream cuts out, that's why. But keep going. Okay. Sorry.
But anyway, so like because you need to reach a larger and larger audience, it becomes necessary to have less and less inherent details within a character and within a story in order to reach a larger and larger audience. Because if you want to get a queer audience on board with your film, let's say you're Disney, and you want a character that's queer, you also want the alt-right racist audience as well, because you need both of those audiences in order to achieve that same obscene amount of money, but you don't want to alienate either audience. So what you do is you leave details blank and let the audience fill in those details themselves so everybody becomes right. So if you see a character as queer, that's great. But if a person doesn't see the character as queer, they can also be right. And I think this is something that's intentionally being done by a lot of larger blockbuster projects. This is my big kind of argument.
Well, that is like the Disney method of filmmaking, isn't it? You want to reach the largest common denominator, and you do that by avoiding any. And ultimately, you really can never do that. It's an impossible goal. You're gonna alienate someone inevitably with your intentions.
But they're gonna try. They try their best, obviously. They do try their best to be like. That's why they have for a while they just had the gay character be very easily cuttable from outside mark, but also like just having it vague enough where like you can just not think about it.
Well, that's why Disney has always been very successful to an extent. They've avoided getting anyone angry by avoiding saying anything, you know. And Harry Potter is much of the same there too. It does have this very traditionalist, very bland. Well, I don't say bland, but very view of diversity. But I will also say that by that same metric, that's Percy Jackson. The opposite is Percy Jackson's success by having a cast of characters who are so diverse, deliberately so, in order to make everyone feel included. Marvel, you mentioned Marvel before. I don't think that applies to Marvel at all, because Marvel has been increasingly trying to include everyone, you know, to some extent. Their level of success is different, but, you know, you can't say the world is trying to have its cake and eat it too by having a gay alien who helps people make the atom bomb. You know what I mean? Like
I mean,
a gay alien robot.
I would say that's one of the few examples where that is presented. I would think with like with Marvel, it is more kind of like the nudge nudge wink winking of characters like Loki that seem to be, I mean, presumably canonized as queer, but to an extent where it's questionable. I think a lot of kind of I feel like a lot of just blank, a lot of stuff is left intentionally blank to the audience because almost of like it's almost like audiences are like hyper cinema literate to this point because they are so in tune with media and blockbuster movies and watching films and all that stuff that we have become just so in tune and so hyper literate to the language of cinema that I argue in this thesis that I'm making that filmmakers just leave that stuff blank to let the audience who is hyper literate to kind of just fill in what they want to happen. So they imagine a scenario that the piece itself is not actually saying, but because there is not that detail presented within the piece, so the audience kind of brings this. And I like it in my video. I use in this imagined video that I am making. I use examples such as like Harry Potter for one could be an example. I could also use the Disney movies, like I said. Also, I would probably use Hell of a Boss, which is something I also did a video essay about as a similar phenomenon. But this idea of like
I feel like this is a very not to cut you off. I'm sorry, but
yeah.
I am worried because the thunderstorm is right over my head right now. So I do want to say this in case I get cut off and my power goes out.
For sure.
You know, the ideas you were presenting, I do agree with them. This is a technique I think used by some studios and marketers, knowingly or unknowingly. But I also think it's important to note that, you know, there's it's like all things, it's on a gradient, right? It's on a spectrum. I think Harry Potter is more towards the extreme end of that spectrum.
Yeah.
Harry Potter's entire success, I remember this when I was a kid growing up. I want to bring this up before, again, my power gets up. That there was a guidebook on Harry Potter. This was back when the fourth book came out, and they're trying to speculate how the books would end. And they had all these theories, and they were like, the Terminator 2 theory, that they're trying to use the time turners to travel back in time and try to stop the Voldemort from being born, something like that. There was a theory that was, and it was all drawn from like different pieces of literature, different works. One theory was that Wormtongue was going to do something that led to Voldemort's defeat. You know, kind of not Wormtongue, Wormtail, in reference to Wormtongue from Lord of the Rings, or Gollum from Lord of the Rings. Oh, it's coming down by me right now. I'm not sure the mic's picking any of this up. It is pouring around my head. Oh, good. Yeah, you can't hear this right now, but it's all of a sudden just like. Anyway, so these are all speculative pieces that built hype organically without scholastics or J.K. Rowling doing anything. I think it was insane. It was wild, and this was all done in like places like MuggleNet, which is now public enemy #1 for J.K. Rowling. They were doing a lot of publicity, a lot of theorizing. Fanfiction with theorizing. Fanfiction was writing they would reinterpret the Harry's dad is like a foursome, a poly foursome with his friends, you know. Yeah. You know, there are all these intense. Oh, it is the whole.
Now I hear it.
Yeah, it's overhead. I may have to cut off the stream very quickly.
Oh yeah, no, I just have a quick thing once you're done. Then you can cut the stream once you're done with what you're saying.
Yeah. I may end it now actually because I'm right by a window and I may want to move away from this window. Yeah, this is a lot. Okay, so I'm gonna end the stream right now and not get electrocuted. So Madeline, anything you want to plug before I run away from the window?
Yeah, Madeline May is my YouTube channel. I have my own Harry Potter video. Please check it out. Friendly Cat Life on Twitter. I'm working on my next video, which is going to be more on this topic of speculation and also investment in speculation. That's really important. Investment in things that do not exist within the media being presented, but could be presented by just things and whether those things ever happen or not, or if the build-up of the speculation is the point. Blah blah blah. But yeah.
All right, cool. So, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. Don't die.
I'm gonna get away from the windows right now. Have a good one, guys.